TV. Hi, everybody. Welcome to another Friday afternoon edition of the Green Rush, the really live business of cannabis talk show on Pro Cannabis Media. I'm Jimmy Young, the founder of Pro Cannabis Media, and we're so happy you've joined us again here on a Friday afternoon. We're out of the New England area, just outside of Boston, well, way outside of Boston, to be honest with you. And I'm going to be joined by two guest hosts from both ends of the country, New Jersey and Washington State. Josh Kincaid is with us from Washington State, and Doug Miller from New Jersey is with us as well. And now joining us in the Zoom room on the really live edition of Green Rush is an old friend of mine named Stephen Werther. He's the principal at the Alternative Compassion Services dispensary, medical dispensary in West Bridge. Are you in West Bridgewater or in Bridgewater, Stephen?
Regular Bridgewater, just Bridgewater.
Regular Bridgewater, Massachusetts, a small town of how many?
There's about 30,000 residents in Bridgewater.
All right, 30,000. That's not bad at all. And Stephen is here for a number of reasons. One is he's a friend of mine. Second of all, he is also the owner of a medical only dispensary in Massachusetts. And tomorrow in Bridgewater, there'll be a vote that the people that live there get to say to Stephen, hey, you can have an adult use, or you could go after an adult use license now. Stephen, are you nervous about this or what?
Sure. Cautiously optimistic. Been working at this for a long time. 2 years ago, the town council voted to block us from being able to add or convert to adult use. We actually want to add adult use. But yeah, so luckily a couple of the town councilors got this vote on tomorrow. There's a special election in town actually for 8 of the 9 town councilor seats. And there's this one question on the ballot that would allow the 2 existing medical dispensaries in Bridgewater to be able to add or convert rec sales. So yeah.
And New Jersey and Washington, I'm guessing that this also happened. And Doug, you're in New Jersey. When they first went adult use only a few months ago, there was, again, a lot of pushback by local communities. Has that started to soften a little bit?
It has a little bit. They want some of the tax revenue, and they just want to have extra businesses in town and attract foot traffic. So some of the towns have definitely lightened up on it. But yeah, it was something to see, because only some of the dispensaries that were medical use were allowed to become adult use, and some had stipulations where they could only open up at 4 p.m. on certain days. It was the craziest thing at first. They were just like making up rules as they went along, it seemed like. But
that sounds like Massachusetts. That sounds like every new state. Josh, being the elder state in Washington State, is it separated between adult use and medical, or how does it work in Washington State?
So we started off medical, and then we went recreational about, I think 10 years, maybe. No, sorry, 2016 is when we went adult use. And ever since then, the numbers have just plummeted. Nobody really goes out because it doesn't really make sense. Literally doesn't save you anything. You get 10% off maybe if you're going to go buy at a store. The advantage, however, is if you want to grow, you have to have a medical card. Otherwise, it's literally a felony to grow without one. So that's one advantage.
Yeah. And again, every state's rules and laws are different. There are new states coming on board on a regular basis. New York, of course, opened up for legal sales this week. And from what I've seen is the lines were many blocks long, and it was a bit crazy, but you know what? It got done, and now it's out there. Stephen, let's go back to you for a second. The move from medicinal to adult use opens up the entire market to you, right? Rather than those like myself who have a medical card, right?
Exactly. Yeah, there are a lot of people, and we can get into the whole discussion or whatever about medicinal and recreational, but there are a lot of people that don't want to get their cards, but they still want to be able to get cannabis. We have we have some products that are clearly medically focused that you don't generally see at adult use stores in Massachusetts, like RSO, for example. But yeah, we want to open it up so that people that don't want to get their cards still have access to our fantastic products.
Yeah. And then you've been in operation, tell me, August. I know it was August, and I just don't know what year, 2019, 2018?
Yeah, 2018. So 4.5 years for retail. We started cultivating 5 years, and this March will be 5 years ago we started cultivation.
Yeah. And your facility you could replicate your facility pretty much anywhere because you've got the grow underneath, the offices and the dispensary are above it. And then you've got a whole bunch of parking spots all around your facility out there. And I've always found it easy on, easy off the highway in Massachusetts. Are you starting to see, are people finding you much easier now?
Yeah, we don't have any. Yeah, I mean, as far as finding us, it's easy to find us. We have people that still come to us and get to the door and don't realize we're medical only, and obviously we can't let them in. So, yeah, but yeah, getting here, as you're somewhat familiar with, we're right off of Main Highway, so it's pretty easy.
All right, I'm going to turn it right around and ask both Doug and Josh this question. The word recreational. Josh, are you comfortable with that as opposed to adult use?
I use them almost interchangeably just because we were using recreational as a word for a long time, but I think adult use is more appropriate, and so I've been trying to lead with that. I don't think recreational is it's not really my opinion. I think we all use cannabis medicinally, whether it's for anxiety or pain, inflammation, whatever reason we're using it for. All the common denominator is some kind of medicinal benefit to that. So I try not to say recreational because that means like we're going out and eating edibles and partying and having a good time. And some people do that on a Friday night, but I don't think that's the majority nor the holistic approach the industry necessarily wants to take.
Yeah. Well, needless to say, none of us on this call are under, and they're not in the 21 to 35-year-old demo, let's just say. Doug, recreational versus adult use in New Jersey, that's the newest state, really, on the East Coast that is now legal. I mean, Maryland came on board as well recently, but are you comfortable with the word recreational when it's being described as an adult use product?
I tend to think if I'm talking to a younger crowd, you use the word recreational. And again, like you were saying, it's more partying for them. They don't really understand everybody the medicinal, and nor do they really need medicinal side when you're in your 20s. And some people do, but as you get to your like 30-year-old market demo and older, yeah, adult use just seems to be the term, and it is. It's just a better term, to be honest with you. It doesn't sound like you're going out to party.
Right, and as I keep trying to explain to people, this is a plant medicine. Stephen, I know you're adamant about this. You know the medicinal qualities of this plant, and you want to be able to provide good product to your customers because you see the impact it had. I know there's at least one story that has always kind of given me goosebumps about that couple that came in with a child, I believe, and you guys were able to kind of concoct some kind of a magic potion, and it helped him out. As an owner of a cannabis dispensary, isn't that one of the reasons why you got into it, was to help people?
Yeah, frankly, it was the whole reason I went into it. Back in back in 2016, when the adult use market was legalized in Mass too. But we went into business. We strictly went into business for medical. I mean, we wanted to help people. A lot of people got their medical licenses because that gave them first dibs on getting an adult use license. That was never our intention. Our intention was to have a medical facility, and we have helped so many people, including that really young child that you're talking about. It was a very heavy CBD to THC ratioed product per this kid's doctor. But yeah, we've helped a lot of people, and that's why I say we want an adult use license, but I really want people that are looking for medical products, focused products to come here. And just if they don't want to get their card, I get that. The state's even considering doing away with the telemedicine that they brought on when COVID hit. And instead of making it easier for people to get their cards, they're going to go back to making it more difficult. We have to have an appointment. So, but yeah, we're focused on medical, and even if we have adult use, we're still going to have our, we don't refer to our dispensary agents as patient care advocates. We don't refer to them as bud tenders. But even on the adult use side, we're going to be training our staff the same way we train the PCAs we have now.
And I'm going to ask you. I'm going to ask you a question about the mentality of the consumer who comes in with a medical card to your facility. I know in adult use dispensaries, the buying queue, I guess it would be, is give me the one with the most THC. That seems to be how people buy this product. But as someone who understands the product, it's more than just how much THC, isn't it? It is all about those terpenes that drive the bus.
Oh, absolutely.
And are they coming in medicinally? Are they looking for the highest THC, or are they looking for answers to an ailment or a condition that they've been diagnosed with?
So honestly, I mean, there's a little of both, right? But a lot of people that come in here, and I would say, probably a majority of our patients, they're looking for relief. So they want to know what strain, what combination, whether it's a one-to-one product or whatever it is. They're looking for that relief, and they're looking for the right, how you titrate, whether you eat it, smoke it, vape it, whatever it is. That's the majority of our patients, and those are the kinds of people that we're targeted at helping. So, but there are some people that, we call them tack hunters, and they're going to be out there. And frankly, the industry is doing it to themselves, right? Rather than being focused on the terpenes and the flavonoids. And, there's a reason why everyone claims whole plant medicine is best.
I think it's interesting how you view that, but I do want to go back to also correct myself. It's not just a grow facility underneath. In the same level that you have your offices and your dispensary, you've got a pretty elaborate kitchen and manufacturing facility right there. That's what I mean about you could pick up the whole thing and move it anywhere and start up just like it. I mean, it's a replicable franchise almost.
I suppose in some ways it is.
Yeah.
Right? The people behind all of this. But yeah, I mean, in that regard, it is. A medical license in Massachusetts allows you to cultivate, do production, which is edibles, concentrates, and have a retail store. Whereas if you're an adult use, the cultivation license, a production license, and a retail adult use, those are all separate licenses.
Right, and if I remember correctly, was it 17,000 square foot grow?
Well, the buildings are almost over 25,000 square feet.
Okay.
We have about 10,000 feet of actual canopy.
There you go. And of that percentage, how much are you able to wholesale? Because you can still wholesale some of that, right?
Sure. Yeah, we have to. So in Massachusetts, we're required to maintain a minimum of 30% of our inventory for our medical patients.
Yep.
Right now, probably 95% of our products go to our medical patients, and we wholesale a small amount. Yeah, it's vertical integration.
But you're going for the adult license because you want to expand your market. Like any businessman wants to get the most reach and availability for their products for adults. And the bigger your market, the better your business is going to do. Obviously, this is why you're moving towards an adult use vote anyway. And how do you view the vote? Are you confident going in or what?
Yeah, we are confident. We've done a lot of outreach here. And most of the people we've come across are for it. I mean, definitely sentiment seems to have changed. There's always a vocal no people, and Bridgewater has this pretty vocal no group. They tend to be on the smaller side, and they just cite all the things that we all know in this industry just not to be true. But you can put stuff out there, and it's hard to sometimes refute that stuff. So but they put stuff out. You know, they're still, these guys are in Bridgewater are still using the whole gateway thing. It's comical, really, but yeah, we're optimistic. We really think we have a good shot at getting this squared away.
Well, I hope so. We certainly hope so. And I will be marching with you guys. I'll be hanging out for a little bit in the morning, late morning, down there in Bridgewater. And if anybody is going in to vote no, let me at them. Okay, let me at him. I think I could sway him one way or another. Hey, Doug, if you were confronted by a naysayer in your backyard, how would you spin them around to the other side? What are some of the factoids that you've used to enlighten people about the medicinal products of this plant?
I always just explain what I've seen firsthand and what I've done firsthand. And that is, unfortunately, my mom was one of the first patients in the state of New Jersey to receive the medical card in 2016. She unfortunately passed away from colon cancer. But at that time, I was a chef, so I would make all of her food with butter. And I saw firsthand what it would do for her. She told all the doctors what it did for her. No other medicines really helped her. She had a tough time with everything. And unfortunately, she passed, and I just took my knowledge to the next level. I wanted to help more people because I saw what it did. And then I started doing extractions myself and making my own oils and formulas, and to the point where I can stop seizures. I have worked with hundreds of people and stopped seizures all over the country, and work with doctors and teach medical professionals how to properly prescribe medical cannabis. I love the plant. I believe in it, and I've seen what it does, and I know what it does. And when you see doctors that really don't help, they can't help with pharmaceuticals when people get to a certain state, and cannabis can just help people's quality of life. And I always say, I don't claim to cure anything, and doctors aren't curing anything either. So let's get it straight. But if you can help somebody's quality of life and extend their life a little longer so that they can enjoy themselves, it's a beautiful thing. And I literally met my business partner that way, helping her grandmother and extending her life. And we became business partners. And you just find some amazing people out there, and you try to help when you can. That's what it's about.
Yeah. Hey, another amazing person out there is in Washington State, Josh Kincaid. Josh, if you confront somebody who talks about cannabis as a gateway drug, how do you handle that myth?
Oh, I promote cannabis all the time at the gym. I'm at the gym, every morning working out, and the trainers and people look at me weird. Some people are like, oh, hey, I like your shirt, or I like your hat, or whatever. So I'm just out there promoting it. Active cannabis lifestyle right here. Old guy working out, using cannabis. And that's how I promote it. I'm just living my life. I'm trying to lead by example, and getting rid of some of those myths. So I'm not just this young kid trying to get high, right? So the first thing I would say is, if you think this t-shirt is inappropriate to wear to a gym, what about the machine you have over there that's dispensing sugary beverages? Sugar causes all of these ailments: diabetes, glaucoma, cancer, heart issues, spontaneous combustion, like whatever the issue, cannabis is not any of those. And so I want to kind of show people and just kind of, again, lead by example rather than having some kind of confrontation. I'd rather just show by example. But if they want to come to me and say, hey, that shirt's not appropriate to wear at the gym, that's the first thing I would say is, neither is the Red Bull, and they've got this other cafe that serves nothing but waffles and sugary beverages. And this is supposed to be a healthcare facility? Come on now.
Oh, America, what a country. Stephen, how do you handle that pushback on gateway? It's a gateway drug. I have a great line, but I'm going to let you go first, and then I'm going to follow it up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it's similar to what these guys said. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. I mean, talk about things that, as Josh was saying, I mean, things are addictive. Sugar's addictive. Coffee's addictive. Cigarettes are addictive. There's so many things that are worse for you, clearly, but if you look at the list, cannabis is way down the bottom of the list from all these other things. So yeah, we just try and address it that there are a lot of things people can get addicted to. People have addictive personalities. Doesn't matter what it is, food, chocolate, coffee, it doesn't matter. So that's how we try that's how we try best to address it and say it's, it's not anything about cannabis. It's about people's personalities and whether they can use something appropriately or abuse it, whether people are going to abuse it.
Yeah. And I always start with, excuse me, do you drink coffee? Have you ever skipped a day without coffee? Do you know how you feel after that? Because that is a far more addictive drug than the cannabis plant. I mean, we've all gone through it. 91% of Americans, by the way, have 1 cup of coffee a day. And to me, seems to me that they probably have had a coffee before they imbibe in any other medicine or drug out there. So who's to say that caffeine isn't the true culprit here and the true gateway to start using a product that has some medicinal benefits? What does coffee do for us all? It wakes us up. It helps us focus in the morning. It gets rid of that drag you have when you first are getting up out of bed. That's an addiction, folks.
And it's provided by your employer. It's psychoactive, and you have all these employers they literally offer you free coffee to say, go get that drug as long as it works and benefits us. Yeah. Go ahead, we're going to pay for it. And, the other thing I like to say is the endocannabinoid system speaks volumes. So what I like to tell people is that, just like the electrical outlet on your wall, all those switches, digestive system, immune system, respiratory systems runs on your endocannabinoid system. And if your ECS is dry, what do you think is doing that to your system? We don't have an Advil or an ibuprofen system. You're going to block your CB1, CB2 receptor cells and try to block the pain and inflammation. That's okay, but your body's not breathing. And so trying to explain that to somebody who might be one of those NIMBYs, the not in my backyard types, is the first thing I would go to is say, you have an endocannabinoid system that requires cannabinoids like CBD or THC to run on it. And if it's dry, probably not a good thing. Running a car dry with no oil, not good. Looking at a train that runs dry on its tracks, you put something in the way, what happens? Decimated. So I wouldn't probably try to run on a dry endocannabinoid system knowing that. So I keep mine flush.
And to add to that, I always say it's a real simple formula. Cannabis works. Cannabis works because it reduces inflammation and stress. Stress causes everything, causes all your inflammation, which causes just about every ailment. So when you have a plant that's natural and it actually reduces the 2 things that cause all your ailments, it doesn't take rocket science to figure it out. You just have to find the right formula that works for you. Every person's different. And I explained, that's why pharmaceutical medicinal medicine don't work, because it's all geared like 1 to 1,000 people it can work perfect for. And the rest is just going to kind of work for. And unless you can, and who's sitting there trying to figure out their pills and milligrams and stuff like that with something pharmaceutical? You just take what the doctor tells you. At least cannabis, you can actually figure out your dosage, have edibles, have different forms of digesting it and inhaling it, whatever you like, and figure out exactly what you need. Some bigger people need a lot before they even feel anything, and smaller people don't need so much, and it's vice versa. You just never know on the person or what pain they're in. So you can figure it out and manage it, and it's never harming anybody. I always say it never interacts with any of your medicines. Not that I've ever seen. I just saw that they were talking about anesthesiology. The anesthesiologists were saying they want to wait like 2 hours, have people medically tested, and wait 2 hours if they come up from smoking, because it could interact with that. And I've smoked my whole life before surgeries, and I don't know.
I get you. I totally, and I think the biggest thing. It's almost like a huge self-medication study going on right now in legal states all over the United States, because we're all still learning what impact this cultivar might have on my body, what impact that cultivar might have on my body. What if I took just a 4-to-1 CBD to THC, or a 10-to-1 CBD to THC like I do every morning? That to me is really learning what your own body needs. Stephen Werther, I know you'd love to get these 2 guys out there talking to the Bridgewater residents, but the only way that's going to happen now is if we play back the interviews for them there. You know what I mean, right?
I do.
All right. Well, look, anybody that's in the Bridgewater area, please go out to vote at the middle school tomorrow. I think, Stephen, you said 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. the polls are open.
Polls are open. We'll
Okay.
be there with signs. If you know anybody, if you don't live in Bridgewater, but you know somebody, tell them
Call
to
'em.
come down and support us.
Yeah, if you don't, you're right, exactly. If you're not in the area and you know somebody in that town, by all means, pick up the phone, email them, text them, whatever you do to communicate and get them out to vote. Stephen Werther, so appreciate you coming on. You know, we should also mention that Bridgewater isn't the only town you're in. You opened up where?
We have a medical dispensary in Hull, Mass.
Hull, Mass, which is the home of Nantasket Beach, which
It
has
is.
right. I mean, anybody who grew up in the greater Boston area knows all about Nantasket Beach. And, I've been going to that beach since I was 3 years old, and I have a picture to prove it. Not that I'm going to show that. Okay. Stephen Werther from ACS, thank you so much for coming on. Appreciate it. And we will continue with our Green Rush Live Business of Cannabis talk show after this break. And after all, we missed 420. So Jonathan Edwards, he's got to bring us right back to it. It is Friday after all.
Yeah, this is a tune that I wrote back in 19... I've forgotten. We had a saying in our old band, one of my first bands in 1966 or so. What are you going to do tonight? Oh, just, like every other night, just going to lay around the shanty and put a good buzz on. Gonna sit down in the kitchen, fix me something good to eat. Make my head a little high, make the whole day complete. Gonna lay around the shanty, oh mama, and put a good buzz on. Pass it to me, baby, pass it to me slow. We'll take time out to smile a little before you let her go. We're gonna lay around the shanty, oh mama, and put a good buzz on. You're on something. Go ahead. Rick Brodsky, everybody. Nothing to do and there's always room for more. Fill it, light it, shut up and close that door, baby. We're gonna lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on. Take it, okay. Prohibition never works, it's time to realize it. It grows in my backyard, it's time to legalize it. We're gonna lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on. I'm gonna sit down in my rented car. I'm gonna jam it into drive. Gonna head on out and play at WSCA with Sean. I'm glad I'm alive. We're gonna lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on. every night and day. We gonna lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on.
Nice. It's Friday. Thank God. Thank God Jonathan Edwards is joining us live in the WSCA studios.
And welcome back to Green Rush Live, a Friday afternoon business of cannabis talk show that we do here every week on Pro Cannabis Media. I'm Jimmy Young, the founder of Pro Cannabis Media, and a reminder again to please share, like, and subscribe to all our programs on Pro Cannabis Media, not just this one. One that I'm most proud of, no disrespect, boys, okay, is the We Talk News show that we put together every week with Elena Pinto as the anchor, Tori Chamberlain as the producer. These are two professional broadcasters, professional producers and a broadcaster, okay, that are putting together a coast-to-coast news show every week for Pro Cannabis Media. We have 12 correspondents from all over the world who call in their 90-second reports on what's going on in their neck of the woods, which is really fulfilling my vision of building a company that will continue to document the end of cannabis prohibition in this country. And joining us from New Jersey, and the president of the New Jersey Cannabis Business Association is a friend. Edmund DeVoe is with us. Edmund, thank you so much for joining us here on Friday afternoon.
Thanks for having me again, Jimmy. Really appreciate it. Happy New Year to everyone.
And a Happy New Year, for sure. And let's talk about New Jersey and cannabis. Is it a Happy New Year, or are they seeing doom and gloom like we in Massachusetts are hearing about?
Well, to use the pun, the bong is either half full or half empty. And so when you look at, I'll start with the half empty piece. So the half empty piece says, look, New Jersey took too long to get things up and running. Some people criticize the process, both legislative and regulatorily, saying, it took the legislature too many years to pass legislation, and it took the regulatory commission too long to get the licensing process up and running. Now, all that being said, when you look at the numbers, New Jersey has generated over $100 million in 2 quarters. That's the third and fourth quarters of 2022. So when you look at it, a recreational market that still generated over $100 million in terms of state revenue is not a failing market. You can't call that a failure. Again, if you switch sides, you say, oh my God, they lost $100 million. I say it's just revenue that wasn't realized. So it wasn't lost, as some ventures actually do, but you didn't realize the potential of the full market for a full year. All that being said, again, when you look at what has happened, what's transpired, the process did in fact take off. It was not a slow process as much as it was deliberate. The state was actually deliberate in making sure that it adhered to the legislative and regulatory intent of making sure, first and foremost, those formerly incarcerated, minorities, veterans, all of those licensing categories received the priority that was due. They did that. They generated over 800 conditional licenses within the licensing period. These are conditional licenses, meaning I don't own my property, I don't have municipal approval, but the state recognizes my right to move forward in this industry. And we are slowly but surely now unrolling or rolling out the permanent or annual licenses. Again, some may say slow to the draw. That may very well be, but it is in fact happening. And so when you look at the economic trends, in New Jersey, the economic trend is going up. The way I view it, and from a purely commercial, purely economic view, it's a market that is not going boom and then bust. We are rolling out in such a pace that, no, we're not going to have as many dispensaries or as many retail facilities as we may want. We may want more cultivators out there. We definitely will need more cultivators out there. But this is a process that if you're in it and you've got the resources and you're going to make it, and by the way, the state has seen what's going on, and we've been at the table with public financing bodies. So we are now getting ready to roll out public financing assistance for certain applicants. So this is definitely an economy, an industry in a state that's moving forward.
Yeah. It's funny when you describe what's going on there and you're talking about the legislature and you're talking about the voters voting it in, very similar scenario here in Massachusetts, except for that one about overpopulating and having as many as 10 or 11 dispensaries in one town like Northampton, where the only dispensary that got a license recently just closed. So again, you've got 10 still operating in one small town in Western Massachusetts. Are the lessons that Massachusetts are going through now something that the New Jersey group is aware of and watching and seeing and probably doesn't want to replicate?
Well, it's interesting, Jimmy. I think this is somewhat of an unintended consequence or an unintended win, actually. When the state was grappling with coming up with legislation that all legislators could get behind, or at least your majorities could get behind, one of the things that they promised was that individual municipalities could either opt in or opt out. They could set the tone in terms of how many dispensaries or retailers, how many cultivation facilities, how many manufacturers. So all the zoning, all of the licensing caps are now part of the municipal decision process, not the state. And so when you look at that happening, the state in some ways has controlled the market. And again, some people say it's to the detriment of the industry, because you do have people that are looking for sites. You do have people that are looking for real estate, because not even half of the municipalities have opted in yet. It's a real challenge, and we get that. But at the same time, you're not going to do this boom market where you've got thousands of properties that are now rented, people in them just going to bust because you have too many retailers in a single town or even in the vicinity. So while we do want more, we do see a need, and there's definitely room for more of a commercial base. The way it's been rolled out, we're going to avoid that process, whether it's Oklahoma, look, in all deference, but that's an example. People were getting licenses and the people walked away from their stores. People walked away from their infrastructure. That's not happening in New Jersey. I don't think it will, because of, again, being deliberate.
Deliberate's another word for slow. Okay, you've got a New Jersey native on with us, Doug Miller. Doug, I'm going to ask you, as a New Jersey resident, what's your opinion and observations about the rollout of the adult use market in your garden state?
That was actually a great way to explain it, to be honest with you, because it was rolled out very slowly and everybody thought so, and it kind of was. They didn't have the regulations. I mean, they were like 3 years behind. They'd write them, and then 3 years later they would adopt them, and everything changes within 6 months. So everything they were adopting was just crazy. But at the same time, it kind of slowed up the amount of people that could really open up legitimate dispensaries and operations. And you don't have a big flooded market with a lot of things. And people ask me all the time, because I invest and I've been in the industry for a while, how do we get in? How do we get in? I say, the first thing you have to do, write a business plan. And then second thing, which is the most important thing, go to whatever town you're trying to find real estate in and see if they'll even let you. Because like you said, in New Jersey, every town is different. And I live in the town that we basically had the very first dispensary in it. It was Compassionate Science in Belmar. Now it's Curaleaf. And so it's a big operation, but that's the only one that they're going to allow in town. But all the towns around me are all letting 2-3 dispensaries around, because they want to compete with Curaleaf in the tax revenue. So yeah, it's just one of them things. But they also realize, like you said, you can only have one dispensary so close to each other, because they'll start to go under if you start competing too much, just like some of the other markets. And Michigan's another example of a market that's been having the same issues.
you guys have any idea what the cost per gram is in New Jersey? I think we lost Doug.
Yeah.
Edmund, do you happen to know what the cost per gram is in the state right now?
Not per gram. I could tell you from the eighths, right? We by eighths. So if I don't make the transition, I was never good at math. So when we look at an eighth in New Jersey is anywhere between $48 and $60 for the eighth, and an ounce is anywhere between $4.80 and $5.20.
Wow.
Somewhere in that range. Yeah, it's crazy, and they don't really give you any breaks either. It's not like if you're, a very small amount on, like, if you buy an eighth or a quarter, but like a half ounce really doesn't matter. If you buy that, you're basically buying 2 quarters.
Right. And Josh, I want to get your opinion from a mature state. Okay. What advice would you give New Jersey people, whether they be regulators, growers, people that want to get into the business, based on some of the lessons that Washington State has learned, and I understand are still learning?
Yeah, I would say plan on it costing more, plan on making less, plan on it taking longer, and plan on lots of headaches. And if anything, just plan on constant changes. If you're paying attention to, so most people would have no idea that Washington State has tried to limit the THC to 10 milligrams. They've tried to limit the color, the shape, the everything to try to not be attractive to children. So if you're in the industry, you're running around like a chicken with your head cut off, trying to figure out, is this bill going to pass? Do I need to figure this out? Instead of just running your business like a normal human being, you have to worry about these potential limitations and regulatory constraints. In Eastern Washington, it's all cow country, right? So you have a large NIMBY crowd. They're not my backyard crowd over there, but they're totally okay with cow manure. They're like, oh, this cannabis, it stinks so bad. I can't smell cow poop anymore. But really, it's this domination of wine country. They don't want anybody to touch Red Mountain that's dominated by the terroir that people love to grow wine on. And so there's this community where farmers don't want them, cow farmers don't want them, retire people don't want them, conservatives don't necessarily want it, wine country definitely doesn't want it. And so you have to anticipate out of nowhere that there's going to be roadblocks for cafes. You're going to have the no smoking. You're going to have the drinking and driving group coming after you. You're going to have all these maybe unexpected groups. And so regardless of what segment you think you're going to get in, plan on a headache.
Edmund, do you have your ibuprofen or Tylenol standing by for that?
It's interesting. I appreciate Josh's comments, and Doug, thank you very much for your insights. Josh is 100% right, and so Jimmy, being slow or deliberate, everybody showed their true colors.
Right.
The pharma industry got their lobbyists. They fought against the legislation. They got it into the heads at that time of even the Black Caucus in the legislature, and had pushed about how this is horrible for communities of color, and it was crazy. And yes, the drunk or intoxicated driving groups came out. The family practitioners, the MDs even, and I actually spoke at the Academy of Family Practitioners, and their biggest complaint was not so much, oh gee, it's cannabis. It was, well, who's going to train us? I mean, we got everything. So Josh, to your point, fortunately or unfortunately, people came out, they showed their true colors while the legislation was being discussed, which actually prompted the legislature to punt the process to the voting public, who overwhelmingly voted in approval of the cannabis industry.
It's funny, we talk about the municipalities. Do they have separate elections for whether they allow cannabis coming in or not?
So each municipality, 565 of them, each has their own governing body who adopts the ordinance as to whether to opt in or opt out.
Okay. And is it once you opt out, is there a way to opt back in based on either a local municipality vote, like my friend Steven's going through tomorrow in Bridgewater, Mass?
Oh, okay. So it's interesting in New Jersey and Doug alluded to this in terms of the regulatory timeline. So legislation was passed. The Cannabis Regulatory Commission, or CRC, had a date certain that they had to craft regulation. They did that, but at the same time, municipalities had to decide, opt in or opt out. Well, the majority of towns opted out because there was no regulation. So opting out, at least taking a position, gives you the opportunity to opt back in at whatever time you want. If you opted in, you've opted in for 5 years minimum. If you said nothing, and there were only 3 municipalities that I think said nothing, you're automatically in. But they never adopted ordinance to govern the cannabis industry. So by and large, of the 565, the majority have the opportunity to opt in whenever they want.
Yeah. I think in Massachusetts, they made it based on the vote of the question 4 that was on the ballot. And that was their basis. And then, of course, they could still opt out. But that being said, it's also been a few years later. One of the biggest issues, Josh brought it up, and I have not heard about this that often, just because Massachusetts is so established, they're just trying to figure out how to keep it going, is the percentage of THC and trying to limit the percentage of THC in the product. This, to me, goes to a little bit of ignorance, because anybody who uses the product on a somewhat regular basis understands it isn't about how much THC is in it. It's the terpenes interaction with that THC that impacts the high or the intoxicating effects of the plant. So once again, our legislators love to slow things down and make it deliberate, but maybe they should be more informed about what goes on. It boggles my mind when I hear stories like that, especially like Josh's state in Washington. You guys have had it for what, 15 years?
Yeah, at least, over 10. But here's what they're starting to do now, because they have all these moratoriums in the conservative eastern part of the state, like I mentioned. And so to incentivize them, what they're now doing is literally paying them to switch. So they opted out, and now they're wanting to opt in because they're saying, yo, look, if your county doesn't allow for at least one producer, processor, or store, you're not going to get any of the money that we're generating off cannabis taxes. Right. And so they're going to keep that and then distribute it to the counties that do have it, because you can't benefit from it if you don't allow it. So they'll literally pay them, I think, $1.8 million to opt in, and then they will share revenue from that. Now, don't hold me to that price. It's been a while since I reported that on We Talk News, but they do incentivize people. So I would recommend that other states, New Jersey and whoever else, to maybe incentivize those NIMBYs and not my backyard folks, and even hold it against them and say, you don't get any of this tax revenue until you change your mind.
Well, what's interesting, Josh, and I appreciate that. So we skirted that, and I'll let Doug kind of get his sense from a Jersey thing. But what we said to municipalities was, much like the casino tax, Atlantic City, right? If you go into a casino, that there's a tax that goes directly to Atlantic City. In New Jersey, with the cannabis industry, a point of sale, 2% goes right to the municipality. And so there's this notion of, hey, opt in, at a minimum, the 2% is yours. And then there are other things along the supply chain that you get to tap into for like 1.5%. I don't know if that was a driver, Doug, for some of the towns that you're familiar with.
Well, I definitely know about the 2%. I actually am very familiar with that. I ran in the local election, and it's because Curaleaf's is a very big operation in our town, and they generate a lot of revenue. And so people want to know exactly how much revenue are we getting, and so I kind of know the figures, and it's quite alarming actually. It's like, wow, we get well over $1 million every 6 to 8 months just for that 2%. So like you said, it's quite crazy. But then it depends on what your municipality does with the, with that funding. And that's the other thing, because they all have their own agenda, and, so it's kind of wild. They run into this money, and then it doesn't even sometimes get used for that town, or it just gets used for nonsense. But that's a whole nother story. But yeah, it is a very good way to attract businesses, because the 2% ends up being a lot.
That's the whole idea of passing it and making it legal in the first place, so that people know exactly what they're getting, when they're getting, and then the town that's hosting that dispensary can benefit from that as well. And now let me ask you a question, Edmund. I know it's not that the market isn't that old in New Jersey. Have there been any uses of the tax revenue yet in a positive manner? Like, have they put up a new school? I'm just throwing that out there.
Sure. So, it's interesting. So on the purely recreational side, too soon to tell, right? In fact, they're still arguing, how will we cut the social equity pie, right? And I'm not even going to get into that conversation yet, but that's a piece that's still waiting. But one of the interesting anecdotal comments that I have regarding that is, I went to for the 421, not 420, but 421, the first day of recreational sales in New Jersey. And I was down in Woodston, I think, or Williamstown, New Jersey. And I'm standing there with the deputy mayor and the president of the city council. And they said, this is great for us because we have not raised taxes in 3 years because we've had a medical facility here. Not raising taxes in New Jersey is a big deal. Right? And so here's a town that's saying, we haven't raised taxes because of cannabis. To me, that's as good as building a school, right? Or for some people, that's as good as a new building or a new school. So
Right.
that is an economic reality.
Yeah. Can the federal feds get a wind of that? Although right now they can't even decide who's going to be the speaker. I mean, I don't know about you guys, all right? But, I don't like to turn to politics, but in a lot of ways, I'm really kind of embarrassed about what's going on in Washington, D.C. right now. I don't know how you feel about it, but let's not get into politics. I just want to just throw that out there that, at some point the feds are going to hear that, if we put a little federal tax on interstate commerce, for instance, we could actually help the economy and we could build an expansive new industry that has jobs and puts money back into the local communities. I mean, it makes, for some reason, I think it's simple, and everybody else makes it more difficult than it has to be. I don't know.
I don't know. If the feds see $500 ounces, they may legalize it a lot quicker. They'd be like, yeah, we want a piece of that.
Yeah, right. And the eighth price that you gave, by the way, back in the day, the eighth was a nickel bag, okay? And the quarter was a dime bag, okay? $5 and $10. Yeah, I'm dating myself. What can I tell you? And ounces were $20 back in that day. Now, I will say they went up to 40 very fast as soon as the Colombian market opened up. As I look back at that now, and now I'm seeing ounce prices in Massachusetts. I know a dispensary for fact, I'm not going to give the name, but it's in Rockland, is basically selling ounces for under $100. So, that's the perfect example. You want to study economics 101, check out the supply and demand of the price of what's happened in Massachusetts over the last couple of years when they put out 240 dispensary licenses and dozens of growth facilities with hundreds of thousands of square feet. And, that part of the green rush, I believe, is over, where we have a market correction now. It's just the next step. And I am not savvy enough as an economist. Maybe Doug is, because he studies the stocks all the time. I'm hoping that they'll come out of it because I'm rooting for the industry. And I can also see all the benefits of it. I just don't understand how it got this way. And I guess it had to do more with there was more available than the market could bear.
I think everything got oversaturated with COVID. COVID money, they were throwing money at things that they shouldn't have been throwing money at. And it literally was a recipe for a disaster that was just ready to happen at some point. And yeah, we're going to be in a correction for it. It's just the way it works. I mean, there's charts and they work certain ways, and there's no other way around it. They've been doing the same things for hundreds of years, and there's no other way to explain it. And it's economics, supply and demand, and supply and demand, and that's just the way it works. So we're definitely going to be in a correction. People are going to pivot, be smart, get through it, and then it's going to be a big boom again. It happened in 2008, and we have cycles like this, and people that prepare for them, they make it to the next level. And people that try to live paycheck to paycheck or day to day, they usually get smoked.
Was that a pun? Oh, I'm sorry.
That's a pun. There you go.
Okay, I'm sorry. Edmund DeVoe, you got any special things for the New Jersey Cannabis Business Association coming up in the next few weeks that you want to give a plug to?
Oh, sure. Thank you. So we're looking, well, each month we do some type of networking event in person. We do our Fridays, most every Friday, our lunch and learn program. It's only 30 minutes. With an industry professional. Please do visit our website to stay abreast of those events that will be upcoming. And that's New Jersey, all spelled out, NewJerseyCannabusiness.com. So NewJerseyCannabusiness.com. Come visit us, check us out for our events and some of our policy features. Again, we're looking at how the Economic Development Authority, the state's EDA, is getting ready to start giving grants. We were at the table helping them develop this. So we're very proud of 2022 and look forward to 2023.
Yeah. Well, as far as I'm concerned, last year couldn't end fast enough, and I'm really excited about 2023. So hopefully that's great. Edmund, great seeing you again. And I really appreciate you coming on. You're welcome here anytime. And if there's ever anything we can do for you, please don't hesitate to ask.
Jimmy, thank you so much.
All right, we're going to take our break here. And when we come back, we're going to have an owner of a Maryland dispensary and an owner of a Massachusetts dispensary on together to talk about the differences in the markets, because Maryland just opened. And we'll continue with Green Rush Live after this.
It's the whole package. Not only is it the exclusion, we talked earlier about how experienced is the rep you're talking with. Do they do it full time? Do they do it 5% of the time? Do they have a dedicated back office? How long they've been doing it? There's a lot of people trying to cash in the insurance. The forefathers, like my company, we've been doing it for 3 years, and now they're trying to cash in. It's okay. We like competition, but we know that we're going to come out on top most of the time.
So the reality of the matter is, big banks and small banks are going to be different in a lot of ways. And they're both going to have their advantages and disadvantages. For a business like cannabis, you really have to have an integral knowledge of that business and a real granular knowledge of that business and the players involved in it. And that's why if you look at the banks that are successful to play in this space in Massachusetts, they are smaller banks that are very heavy, intensified personal touch, human communication, where you don't get a lot of that with the bigger banks.
As a broker, we have access to many, many cannabis carriers. So I will go in with 2 or 3 quotes for people. The quotes might be $20,000 for one, $22,000 for another, $17,500 for another. Pretty close among the 3. What I tell people is it's not the pricing, it's what's included and not included, meaning exclusions. An exclusion in layman's terms is just something that's not included. It's not on the menu. So it's just not included. But if you don't know that, if no one shows you that on page 71 of a 150-page policy, you're not going to know. No one knows. I never met one person that says they read an insurance policy. If you do, I got some property in Florida for you.
We are a cultivation through to consumption lifestyle brand for the cannabis industry. Of course, the crown jewel in our product line is the Armoire home grow system. So now with Green Goddess Supply, we can take you everywhere from growing it in the Armoire right through to storing it, consuming it, rolling it, storing it, you name it, A to Z. Our goal is to enable everybody and anybody anywhere to be able to produce their own organic flower quickly, easily, discreetly, and inexpensively.
So the reality of the matter is, big banks and small banks are going to be different in a lot of ways. And they're both going to have their advantages and disadvantages. For a business like cannabis, you really have to have an integral knowledge of that business and a real granular knowledge of that business and the players involved in it. And that's why if you look at the banks that are successful to play in this space in Massachusetts, they are smaller banks that are very heavy, intensified personal touch, human communication, where you don't get a lot of that with the bigger banks.
Cannabis talk show that we do here every Friday on Pro Cannabis Media. I'm Jimmy Young, the founder of Pro Cannabis Media. Always happy to be joined by Josh Kincaid from the Talking Hedge out in Washington State and Doug Miller from New Jersey. Joining us now on our Zoom room are two dispensary principals. One is Rob DeFazio from CNA Stores in Massachusetts, and the other is Mitch Trellis from Remedy in Maryland. So we've got a Massachusetts and a Maryland going. And Maryland, now, Mitch, correct me if I'm wrong, you guys just voted that in, and were you one of the first to open your doors for adult use?
So we're not open for adult use yet.
Okay.
We actually, our adult use program officially starts July 1st. And we're still in the legislative period. There's a bunch of conversation right now being had in our legislature about the exact specifics of when and how we will be starting our adult use program. We believe it's going to start July 1st. Our legislators are adamant that we're not going to have a New York City situation on our hands. So we expect them to start sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
So we'll know more in the next 30 to 60 days.
Yeah, and I know Rob can talk about this. When Massachusetts first passed it at the ballot box, 2016, we know that there was a gray area going on of caretaking or whatever we called it back then. We could meet somebody in the parking lot and buy some.
Can't stand the gray areas. We don't like those.
I don't expect you would. And it happened in New York. You mentioned New York. I mean, we all know, if you've watched the news, what was going on there. I just find it really interesting from how each state handles it and the rollout of the legal industry. And I think Edmund used the word deliberate. Mitch, do you expect it to be deliberate?
No, I think it's going to be the opposite of deliberate. I think that the new leadership in our state, we have a new governor. He's very intelligent. He's very business-minded. And I think that he sees this as what it is, which is very, very low-hanging fruit. We have cards right now. We have medical marijuana cards. Yep. You can literally substitute that card for a driver's license and everything else is the exact same. So not turning this program on right now, it's all nonsense, right? If we truly want to do the will of the people, then we would turn the program on July 1st. That's what everybody voted for. Nobody read the fine print to say it's going to be a year or two later. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah, but as you know, with anything in government, it doesn't go fast. When I was in the Navy, it was hurry up and wait. You know, there's a line you go stood in it. You don't know why, but you didn't want it to get long because you didn't want to be at the end of it. But and here,
so have you noticed that the last couple of states have either gone fast or been unsuccessful, right? So our peer is Missouri, and Missouri intends to start in February, right? So the most successful state up to this point, especially from a tax point of view, is Arizona, and Arizona started in 90 days, right? So it's like the longer you wait, the more likely you are to have a gray market or a non-regulated white market, and that's not what anybody's looking for.
No, and I think the big thing you're going to see is it all depends on how far they are along with their medical market, right? Because that's an easy switch to flip.
That's our medical market did about $660 million in sales last year.
Yeah.
Right. So we have 100 dispensaries.
So Arizona, what Arizona did, and we all know this, I'm guessing if we follow this, is immediately allowed the medical dispensaries to turn into adult use as well in Arizona. And that's how they were able to get it done in 90 days.
That's the conversation here as well.
Yeah, that's what's okay. Good. Well, how many, do you know how many medical dispensaries there are in Maryland?
102.
102. Do you have a cross state? In other words, if I came down there with my Massachusetts card, does that give me admittance?
We call that reciprocity, and they do not have reciprocity in the state of Maryland.
Okay.
So because we're so close to DC, they were always worried. It's actually written into the law, but they were always worried that that would incite the feds.
Yeah. Well,
once it becomes legal for adult use, it's anybody.
No concerns at all. Exactly right.
So.
And Maryland's a unique state.
Yeah.
There's a point in Maryland where we're touched by 5 different states at one point.
Right.
What is it? You can touch 5 states in 15 minutes of driving at one point in Maryland. So.
Yeah.
So Maryland, we have access to a lot of different places, and Maryland's going to be an epicenter of cannabis in America.
I love that, and I love that there'll be a little bit of a weed battle up and down the East Coast now. Massachusetts was first one in, right, Rob?
Yeah, they won't beat us. That's okay though.
Oh, don't take it the wrong way, Rob. We're about to kick your teeth in, my guy. Don't worry about it.
I love good competition. Josh or Doug, if you want to jump in and ask either one of these guys a question, have at it.
Yeah, I'd like to know the difference, Rob and Mitch, between the two. I'm looking at Headset's data from last year, and it looks like Massachusetts for the entire year of 2022 pulled in about almost 1.5 billion compared to Maryland's almost half, $500 million. So Maryland's pulling in $1 billion more. What's you guys' opinions about why? Is it just more stores? Is there people coming from out of state?
Mass is rec and Maryland isn't.
Yeah,
Maryland's medical and Massachusetts is rec.
Right.
So there'll be a huge, and this is what Mitch, you're gonna see in Maryland is as it opens for rec, you're gonna have a huge supply problem because depending on how you guys are getting all that and how they regulate that, like in Massachusetts. If you had a medical license, you had to grow one room for medical product. Whereas if you wanted to sell rec, you had another room for rec. Then they realized how
insane that is.
Insane that is. They just said, hey, you know what? As long as it's tracked and you have a license, whether it's a medical license or a recreational license, we can track where that product goes.
We actually have just like most of the country, we have an oversupply issue in Maryland because while we have a limited number of growers, 18 to 20, they have an unlimited amount of canopy space. So the average grower in Maryland has about 150,000 square feet of grow. So right now
it's square foot or canopy?
It's square footage.
Okay.
So what the numbers that I can throw out at you are all anecdotal, but how do you store weed? You blast it, right? You make it into oil. We believe that there's kilograms and just massive amounts of oil stored in the state of Maryland. Like when rec comes, there's going to be hundreds of thousands of vape carts available in the state of Maryland. The capacity in Maryland is very, very high. So we just don't see that happening. At the same time, we've built a model where we have partnerships with the brands, and the brands have store within a stores inside of our stores. And so it's like a Nordstrom's model. So one of the things that we're able to do is, it kind of ensures supply because those suppliers don't want their store within the stores, which basically act as extra storefronts for them to not have supply. right? So for whatever weed is around, should theoretically go to their stores first and then to our store next.
Yeah. Question. So
can
Mitch,
I go ahead? Yeah.
Oh, sorry. So Mitch, you don't grow in-house everything in Maryland?
No, we're not vertically integrated. Nope.
Okay. Is there any dispensaries?
Say again?
Are any of the dispensaries vertically integrated that can actually grow?
We have a bunch of MSOs in the state of Maryland and a couple of local vertically integrated dispensaries. But again, the price of the weed has dropped about 65% in just the past 12 months. What we were selling for $60 last year, we're selling for about $25 this year.
Right. And Rob, you guys in Massachusetts are going through the same thing.
Of course, same thing. We're all going through the same thing, man. They took all that money out of the stock market they used to build giant grows, and they're all overbuilt.
So what you're going to find is it's going to happen just like it did in Portland and Seattle, where they've got these massive grow facilities, but they don't have the distribution chain. So being vertically integrated like we are makes a huge difference. So you get into I've got 3 stores that I can supply for my 20,000 square feet of canopy. So
totally,
that's a good amount of product that I can leverage. But like Mitch is saying, you partner with other dispensaries that maybe don't have or do have a grow facility, so that the biggest thing when you look at a store, it's like when you go to a liquor store, right? You don't go to just a Budweiser store or just
exactly right.
You don't go to a Bud Light store.
I say it all the time. Nobody shops at the Frito-Lay store.
So when we first opened, we thought, hey, 6 cultivators should be able to provide us our product. And within the first month, we almost ran out of selling eighths and pre-rolls because that wasn't we couldn't get enough of it.
You need some from everybody.
Yeah, our demand in Massachusetts outweighed the supply significantly. Now, like Mitch is saying, all these big companies came in and started building these big sites. And what's happening really is there's a lot of smaller cultivators in Massachusetts that are going out of business or needing capital. And what they end up doing is they end up basically giving away 95% of their business so they can stay alive. And it's because they maybe run into mold problems and they don't have an extraction system to where they can mitigate that, or they just don't have the supply chain or the distribution chain set up yet. So they're growing it, and like Mitch is saying, they're just putting it into distillate because that's the easiest way to keep it. And
I was going to ask, what's the shelf life of distillate versus flower?
You can first of all, we don't call it distillate, we call it hot dog water. So the shelf life of hot dog water could be, who knows, it depends on how nasty you are.
Yeah, but no, it's good for a while. And the problem though is anytime we make a product in Massachusetts, it's got a 1-year expiration date on it.
Exactly.
So it's not like I can take all my flour and make distillate and wait 3 years and then put it in a vape cartridge and go. As soon as I make that distillate, that clock starts from an expiration standpoint. As soon as I make a concentrate, it does that. So that's where it's got to be critical. And this is where you might see a lot of companies going out of business because of the fact that they built too big. Just like you saw in Seattle, where they had these massive 200,000 square foot facilities that they built out everything. And, it's the Field of Dreams effect, right?
This is another reason. What you're alluding to is another reason that I believe we're going to go fast in the state of Maryland, because underlying is the fact that rec can save a lot of local businesses in Maryland.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, a bunch of people have spent a lot of money and got themselves in very tough positions, and rec, it absorbs all of the available supply.
You guys both can learn a lot from Washington. You're not going to have 400 tomato farmers, but I don't think you're going to be able to compare it to alcohol industry, but rather more of the tomato or coffee. So with Washington State is the world's leader in hops. So we grow this one hop and then everyone makes their own beer from it. You're not going to have that in the cannabis industry where one manufacturer grows cannabis and then we all make product from it. It's going to be more like tomato farmers who are at the grocery store. That's a collective of really small farmers that come together and provide one commodity, just like coffee on a global scale. So I think your shift will come way down. And if you look at the average basket price in Washington, we're only paying $32 on average when we go into a store. In Massachusetts, people are spending on average $72. Maryland, they're spending $97.
So that depends on the tax. So that's really, if you look at our average cart, like our average cart's about $65, but that's with tax.
And we have no tax. So ours is exactly what you said.
Yeah,
we have the highest tax in the whole country, and yet we have the lowest price because of the convenience. You go and buy what you want when you want. So why is it that in Maryland you guys are spending, $97 on average, and in Massachusetts it's only $72? What is it?
Because it's medical.
It's number one, because it's medical, and number two, because there is still a.
But what does that mean, though, to the audience? What does that mean? If you're medical, you buying more, or is it more expensive?
It's more expensive. So despite our oversupply, our base price is still higher, right? Because we don't have the number of growers. At the end of the day, there's still only 18 growers here that I can buy weed from. Versus you have, correct me if I'm wrong, what, 1,000, 800?
We only have like 500 now. It came way down.
You used to have 800, and now you have 500, correct?
It was like 1,500 at first. Yeah,
this is exactly my point.
So the reason why it is higher is because when medical patients come in, they usually buy a higher quantity for the month, as opposed to, and someone might come in. Mitch, you might be able to talk to this more, but your price also is being controlled by the 18 growers. So he's buying it wholesale. They're setting that price, and
to a certain degree, yes. Especially the higher quality products and the manufactured products, right? So at the end of the day, my guys, I don't have people in the state that sell high quality gummies for the cents on a dollar that they do in a place like Washington, right? So if I want the high quality gummies, and I live in our stores are more premium stores. If I want the higher quality products, I'm still, like you said, I'm going to pay a certain price because that's the base price, right? And listen, that's how a lot of these businesses are surviving right now, right? So they sell flour at a loss or at break even, and then they make money on their manufactured products. And listen, like you said, a lot of people are going out of business right now, or a lot of people are literally selling weed for less than they grow it for cash.
They're trying to keep the doors open, and you saw that in Washington, but really here, when it comes to what we're seeing, is you've got people coming in that have these massive grows. They have their first harvest. It's not the greatest of weed because it's their first harvest.
Of course.
So what happens is, they try and sell it for that premium price, and nobody wants to buy it because they can get higher testing THC, better quality for a cheaper price, more consistent price. And then what happens, they get stuck with this glut. So either they extract it all and go super cheap on gummies or edibles, or they just sell it at a low price. And you've got your $15, $20 eighths at that.
Yep.
So,
and then we have, in Maryland, we have one of the larger light depth warehouse greenhouses on the East Coast. So we have, a couple growers who have a really low cost to produce. And now they're into a point where, like, this is what they're built for.
Yep.
You know what I mean? When your cost is 45 or 50 cents a gram, you're built for $15, $20 eighths. That's what you're here for. You're here to squeeze the shit out of everybody else when you're making money.
Well, and that's the part. Like, we built our cultivation site in phases, and so we built out 20,000 square feet. We got another 40,000 square feet that we can build out, but I've got to build up that supply chain. And everybody, when they jumped into this industry, thought, "Hey, I can sell this much. I'm going to make as much as I grow. I can sell." It's like
not true.
Like the field of dreams. Build it, they'll come. Right.
Yep.
And you got to actually apply that whole business model to it to some degree to get that supply chain, slowly grow and build as you can, try and minimize your costs. Like, our entire facility is all about efficiency. We use water cooled LED lights to reheat the air as we dehumidify it and send it back in to bring the temperatures up. We recollect all our condensate and reuse it. So a room that normally takes 600 gallons a day, we only end up we reclaim about 90% of that, and then just add 60 gallons more to top it off. So when I got 10 grow rooms going at 6,000 gallons a day, instead of using 6,000 gallons of water every day from the city, I only use 600 because I'm recollecting all that condensate. I'm not just putting it down a drain. So everything we've done, all the way to the point where our stems and stock and waste material, we're working with the University of Massachusetts to come up with a hemp-based plastic and cardboard material so that we can actually repurpose our waste and making our own packaging. Wow. So we got to look at things. You got to be prepared, because history tells us, you look at Colorado, you look at California, Portland, or Oregon and Washington, all the states that are open before us, that you're going to get price compression, and you've got to be ready for that.
It's a fucking weed, man.
It is, but it takes money to grow, right?
No, but at the end of the day, right, it does not take a lot of money to grow it shitty. It takes money, time, expertise, and genetics to grow it well.
Yep.
Right.
And that's the thing. That's when you look at, I always try and compare this to alcohol. People are like, you can buy well vodka all day long, and when we first turned 21, we were looking at the highest alcohol content of what we bought. So we're sometimes drinking grain alcohol thinking we're great, right? Then you get older and you realize that, hey, that's not really what I like. I want a Whistling Pig, or I want a Grey Goose vodka. I don't want the well vodka. And that's where you got to focus on quality from day one. And that's how everything about us is driving that quality. Because, Sam Adams sells a lot of beer. And I use Sam Adams because I'm from Boston and I actually like it. But when you look at Budweiser, they got a bigger operations. But when Sam Adams came up, they were doing it here in Massachusetts and they focused on quality. And that's what you got to really get in.
Let's run all the way back to the beginning when he said Massachusetts was going to beat Maryland. You ready?
Yeah.
I didn't say that we were going to.
Here's what I believe, right? He just spent a bunch of time. He just spent a bunch of time talking to me about efficiency as a grower, right? And I suspect that a whole bunch of his day is spent. And by the way, more power to you. But thank God every day that I didn't win all 3 licenses, because I don't want to be a farmer. I'm a retailer, right? And you want to know how efficient I am? I'm so efficient that I don't have a grow.
Yeah.
I have great relationships where no matter what, I have the best selection and the best prices and the best relationships in the entire state. And I also have, everybody overbuilt. So I actually have my own grow rooms inside of some of the growers so that I can bring my own genetics and I can basically do some of the things that you're able to do without the risk. And while my downside is smaller, my upside is smaller as well. But remember, I'm a retailer. What I'm looking for is uniqueness. I'm looking for strains that a lot of people, exclusivity, things that drive sales, right? Things that drive traffic. Because at the end of the day, I want to be Total Wine. I don't want to be Seagram's. I don't want to be Budweiser. I want to be Total Wine.
Everybody can do what they want.
No question. And there's different places. There's different places for people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Can I talk to you guys about those sales? Because it's 2023 now. So I kind of want to take a look at 2022 as well as 2023 and beyond and see why your sales are the way they are. In Massachusetts, again, looking at this headset data, in January of last year, you had sales that were 48% increased year over year, and then that significantly dropped.
Down 25% across the board.
Maryland's even worse. Maryland on average had a negative 5% per month year over year decrease. Why is there a difference? Were people going outside of Maryland?
Price compression.
That's because you only have 18 people you can buy from. I can't see that as price compression because unless you've got way too much supply.
Because there's 5 other states coming in, and now they're not coming in, and they're going somewhere else. That could explain it too.
For 60, and this year I sell an 8 for 30. That's price compression.
Well, you're also getting more competition. So like here in Massachusetts, a good example for our Haverhill store has gone down about 5% per month for the last 3 or 4 months because another competitor opened up in our area. So there are a lot of reasons for that. You look at like Maine's got a pretty strong market that's near us. Connecticut's going rec. Rhode Island's going rec. New York's going rec. So it's eventually people are coming to see us over the border states. Like we're right near New Hampshire, which is great because New Hampshire won't go legal recreationally until it's federally legal, and they'll control it like they do with alcohol. You can't buy any alcohol unless you buy it from a state liquor store. And all they're going to do is just make more shelves in there, and then you can buy cannabis from them. So for us, that's going to take a while, maybe 2-3 more years. From a retail standpoint, Mitch, the biggest issue as to why we went into cultivation was for 280E tax purposes. Right. It allows us to actually keep some of our money instead of give it all away to the government.
You think I was criticizing? I'm not criticizing. The truth is, I have no desire to be a farmer. When I go to these people's grows, right, I'm not excited about that. I'm excited about retail. Like we've built 10,000 square foot stores with unique experiential experiences and secret doors that go to VIP rooms. And like, I'm trying to be the best retailer on the East Coast. I have no desire to be a farmer. And that being said, right, I have a lot of relationships. I have access to a lot of genetics. So I want my genetics in this market because the weakest part of our market is definitely the genetics. And I'm sure you know that a lot of the genetics that are the best in the world are controlled by people who aren't related to corporations, right? So accessing those genetics for the larger multi-state organizations, it's basically impossible. So what we have is a country full of people who are growing mids.
Hey guys, I think the two of you should have your own show. I'm just saying. I thought that was by far the best half hour I've had to do in a long time since I didn't have to do much. But Rob, tell us where the locations are of the CNA stores. Go ahead.
Haverhill, Massachusetts, 558 River Street, and then 77 Macy Street, Amesbury, Massachusetts. We have a third store that'll be open this summer in Boston, right down by the JFK Museum. So.
Oh, cool! Right outside UMass Boston. That's awesome.
Yeah,
I love that. Hey, Mitch, Remedy. It's in Columbia, isn't it, Merrill? Where are you?
We have two Remedies. We have Remedy Columbia is 8865 Stanford Boulevard. We just moved into 10,000 square foot superstore. It's amazing. And then we also have a store in Baltimore. It's actually in Security off of the 695 at Security Boulevard. So, yeah, we have two stores, and then we're working on a third as well.
Fantastic. Well, Rich, again, thanks for such short notice. Tess Woods does a great job, so I really appreciate that.
It's my pleasure.
Rob, always a pleasure to talk with you anytime. And
Rob,
Scott,
good luck with everything.
Thank you, guys. And we're going to take a break and come back on the other side, and I'm going to unveil what the top 5 news stories were in cannabis according to our viewership, okay, in the next half hour. Don't go away.
So the reality of the matter is, big banks and small banks are going to be different in a lot of ways. And they're both going to have their advantages and disadvantages. For a business like cannabis, you really have to have an integral knowledge of that business and a real granular knowledge of that business and the players involved in it. And that's why if you look at the banks that are successful to play in this space in Massachusetts, they are smaller banks that are very heavy, intensified personal touch, human communication, where you don't get a lot of that with the bigger banks.
It's the whole package. Not only is it the exclusion, we talked earlier about how experienced is the rep you're talking with. Do they do it full time? Do they do it 5% of the time? Do they have a dedicated back office? How long they've been doing it? There's a lot of people trying to cash in the insurance. The forefathers, like my company, we've been doing it for 3 years, and now they're trying to cash in. It's okay. We like competition, but we know that we're going to come out on top most of the time. As a broker, we have access to many, many cannabis carriers. So I will go in with 2 or 3 quotes for people. The quotes might be $20,000 for one, $22,000 for another, $17,500 for another. Pretty close among the 3. What I tell people is it's not the pricing, it's what's included and not included, meaning exclusions. An exclusion in layman's terms is just something that's not included. It's not on the menu. So it's just not included. But if you don't know that, if no one shows you that on page 71 of a 150-page policy, you're not going to know. No one knows. I never met one person that says they read an insurance policy. If you do, I got some property in Florida for you.
So the reality of the matter is, big banks and small banks are going to be different in a lot of ways. And they're both going to have their advantages and disadvantages. For a business like cannabis, you really have to have an integral knowledge of that business and a real granular knowledge of that business and the players involved in it. And that's why if you look at the banks that are successful to play in this space in Massachusetts, they are smaller banks that are very heavy, intensified personal touch, human communication, where you don't get a lot of that with the bigger banks.
All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the final half hour of Green Rush Live, our regularly scheduled Business of Cannabis talk show that we run here on Pro Cannabis Media. I'm Jimmy Young, the founder of Pro Cannabis Media. Please remember to share, like, and subscribe to all the programming we have either on our YouTube channel, our LinkedIn page, our Facebook page, and more importantly now, we are live streaming 24/7 on our homepage at procannabismedia.com. It's picking up our Roku live feed, and you can now just go to the internet on our website and watch whatever you'd like to watch live because we stream 24/7. And joining me on this Friday afternoon edition are our two friends, two regulars, Doug Miller from New Jersey and Josh Kincaid from Washington State. And now we are joined by Jonathan Schwartz. And now I remember why I wanted to talk to this guy. You're in Colombia, right?
Yeah, I'm in Colombia right now.
Okay. I got all excited. I guess you weren't that excited to be.
I'm
how
super
much time
excited,
have you spent in Colombia?
Well, I lived in Colombia for 8 years. So I don't live here right now. I'm living in California. I've been there since 2017, but from 2009 until 2017, I lived here full time. I was a mortgage banker in 2008. I got divorced, grabbed my backpack, flew to Mexico, started traveling south, landed in Colombia. At some point, I lost my passport and met my second wife, and I stayed. I didn't go back.
Look at that. That's actually a nice. That's actually a nice story. I like that. Tell me about you. It says here you're the founder of Lacuna. What is Lacuna?
Lacuna is a plant medicine center. It's an ayahuasca center that we're developing now. I started drinking yahe, which ayahuasca is called in Colombia, in 2011 after my daughter was born. At the time, I was doing a lot of partying. I was smoking a lot of ganja, but at one point, the year before that, I opened a bar and restaurant and hotel on the Caribbean coast, and I did get into it probably further than I should have. So the yahe helped me greatly with my addiction problems and life in general with my health. I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis 20 years ago. So since then, I've always been looking for ways to treat myself, and I found most healing in yahe overall plant medicine. So since 2011, I've been taking it consistently, and I've been coming down to Putumayo, which is the south of Colombia, since about 6 years ago. I met my teacher, my partner, and my shaman. His name is Taita Jairo, and I've been visiting him since then. And we started this project a couple years ago, even though we started really working together a while ago. About a year and a half ago, he came to me and he told me that we were going to grow some yahe. So I said, that's a great idea. And we started building.
I know woohoo, but I don't know yahe. That being said, the news out of Colombia is becoming more and more pro-cannabis, more and more. The legislature seems to want to turn up a crop and start exporting. What's your read on what's going on as far as the legalization movement in Colombia?
Yeah, so in 2016, I was living here. I actually had started a cannabis business in California, an edible company called Cali Gold in 2014. So I was traveling back and forth between California and Colombia. And we were aware of the legalization that they legalized medicinal cannabis here. So there was a rush initially to Colombia for many reasons, but most of those were fueled by money and by stock offerings and deals, and companies were paying tons of money for licenses. Now you can get a license fairly simple. The problem with Colombia was that there's nowhere to export it to. They've legalized it for medicinal export, but there's no one to buy it. So first of all, it's a long game, and anyone who's well funded and is playing the long game, it probably will be the number one place in the world for the beginning of the supply chain, because the cost per gram is probably going to be less than 5 cents. It's 2 years ago, it was someone told me it was like 5 cents a gram, but now there's so much devaluation in the peso, it's probably less than that. So, you know,
that's
from
what
that
I remember.
sense, it's good.
The last time we had a Colombian grower on with us, God, probably a year ago at this point, my brain is so fried. He talked about a $5 per gram price, and you compare it to what some of the legal adult use states in the United States of America, and that's like weird because it's like $7 or $8 a gram in Massachusetts, I think.
Yeah, the cost to produce will be way cheaper in Colombia. They have 12 hours of sunshine all year long. The land is extremely fertile. The people are well trained in farming. They've been exporting, the largest exporter of flowers, cut flowers worldwide for a long time. avocados, coffee. Everyone knows all the other stuff. So the infrastructure's there, the people are there, nature's there, and they are building the infrastructure now for GMP certified, all the things that whatever Europe is going to require for medicinal cannabis to be exported to there. So they're going to be ahead. They are ahead medicinally than most of the world. The problem is it's hard to make any revenues in that side of the business, but there's still tons of opportunities to make money because I don't believe that you have to wait for legalization to be in the cannabis industry. There's gray markets everywhere and there's ancillary businesses everywhere. And now Colombia is one of the places in the world. They actually have a new president that wants to legalize it recreationally, which would be a huge step forward if they do that. And there's tons of opportunities. There's smoke shops opening all over Colombia. So all of the paper companies and the bowls, and I've even seen Delta 8 being sold in smoke shops, and then the grow shops, and there's people selling seeds. So people who are smart know which part of the industry to get into and make money. And the ones with the deep pockets can go for the regulated cannabis and export and all that stuff, but that's expensive.
Josh, I know you're chomping at the. Go ahead.
I was already jumping in, Jimmy. Yeah.
Go ahead.
I want to know about Colombia Gold and if that's going to be like the cliche kind of cultivar move, or what do you think is going to be kind of because it's obviously low price. Like I've talked to the CEO of Clever Leaves and Flora Growth, and I know it's going to be 15 cents per gram, including landing costs if or when it gets into the US, even if that has to go through Mexico with the North American Free Trade Agreement or whatever it's called now. Colombia is going to be a massive disruptor within the industry, and everyone's going to have to adjust because of what Colombia does. Having said that, what's going to be the main driver? Is it the Colombia Gold cultivar, or is there some other stuff that you're excited about? What's going to be that main driver?
Well, I mean, Colombian Gold is actually, I think it's Santa Marta Gold. Santa Marta is the Sierra Nevada Santa Marta is the tallest coastal mountain in the world. Just that's where a lot of the indigenous communities live up there. Every ecosystem on the planet is on that one mountain, from the snow cap all the way down to the desert on the bottom. But also there's tons of coca and ganja that's always been grown in the Sierra. And a lot of that came from there, that Colombian Gold. So that's one of the cultivars, that you'll see here. Also a mango viche, which is my favorite. It's one of the lamb races here. But the people who I know who are into the regulated industry are importing cultivars from other parts of the world and registering them with the government. My good friends, the Fogs, Colombian Organics, they have probably 15 or more cultivars registered with the government. And to be honest with you, I'm not sure what they are, but I saw like a J5, a J6, and some others from outside. So I think you'll see everything.
What do you use? Because you have multiple sclerosis, which I'm familiar with. My dad passed away when I was 10. My college roommate and high school buddy passed away just a few years ago. You said you've had it for 20 years. I don't know any male who's ever had multiple sclerosis or MS for longer than 10 years. What is your secret? Do you have a raw food diet? My buddy was taking Marinol. He hated it, made him pass out. So natural cannabis, I think, is for a lot of people. If my dad had the opportunity to take it, I think it would have helped him out a lot. But Marinol and all these other things are not good. What are you actually doing? Because you look healthy, man. You're not using a walker or a cane or like, what's your secret?
No.
How are you still alive?
Unfortunately, when I was diagnosed, I mean, when you get sick, it's a message, and there's your body talking to you that something wrong. Did I lose you?
No.
Oh, no, you still there? I just sorry about that.
Oh yeah.
So
we're on the edge of our seats, actually.
So you have to start searching and find out what's the source. Like, where's the root cause of the disease? I mean, if you were taking something that was prescribed by a medical doctor, it's definitely not going to treat the root cause of the illness. It's going to treat the symptoms and maybe slow it down. Specifically with multiple sclerosis, it's your nerves. It's the myelin sheaths on your nerves that are deteriorating, and then the message gets lost. So all they're trying to do is suppress your immune system, which is supposedly attacking your nervous system. And those are autoimmune drugs. I don't take them. I haven't taken them in like probably 18 years. At first I did with my initial diagnosis because of fear. And then I started to look, and I started to eat healthy. And I know people who are healthy there's doctors out there and diets. There's Dr. Swank, who had studies from the 50s and 60s, who treated people with a low-fat diet. It was less than 10 grams of saturated fat daily, a nap every day, and a list of other things that you need to do to stay healthy. And the people who followed his diet didn't have any symptoms. So it's, if you go with the doctor route and you listen to them, you probably will, maybe you'll delay the progression, but eventually it will get worse. If you start looking for the root cause, like me, Yahei is the father of all plant medicine. So it's like a pipeline of information to the entire plant kingdom. It shows you the root cause of illness and it gives you the tools to treat it. So that's what I've been doing. Cannabis is good for me. I like to smoke ganja. It's great for symptoms. But there's nothing like Yahei. It's the best medicine on the planet, in my opinion. So that's what I use.
What
Yahei is ayahuasca.
Ayahuasca. Okay, that word I've heard.
Yeah,
that
it's
word
the same
I've heard.
thing.
I get you.
So we say Yahei, and in Colombia, Putumayo, Colombia is the only place they call ayahuasca Yahei. That's what we call it here.
Got it. By any chance, did you see the Growing Belushi series where he traveled to Medellin?
Yeah, I saw some of that. It was pretty cool.
I got that. I loved that show and what he did. He's been on with us, and he's actually, by the way, I can make this announcement up here in Massachusetts. He's going to be the keynote speaker at NECANN in March in Boston, Jim Belushi. And since I know everybody involved with NECANN, I'm really hoping that I get a chance to hang out with Jim Belushi. He's always been one of my favorite actors and comedians and funny guys. And, I've enjoyed all his movies, and I hope one day, I get a chance to say hello to him, and who knows, we might even be able to roll one up. But
I met him at a show last year. He's really humble and he's easy to approach. He's a cool guy.
Yeah, he came off that way when we interviewed him for about an hour earlier last year. And again, I really enjoy him. I love that edition. If anybody hasn't seen the Growing Belushi show that was on the Discover Channel, you can find it on YouTube. You can find it on YouTube. You can Google it and find it. It's not like you got to pay for it. You just got to go see it to believe it. And like I said, Belushi does a great job with it.
Hey, Jonathan, how often do you do the ayahuasca?
Oh, there you go.
Well, when I lived here, I did it every week or every 2 weeks. It was a Saturday night ceremony. I lived in a city called Armenia in the coffee region. We had hostels in this really beautiful place. And outside of the city, there was a shaman from Putumayo, Taita, and he held ceremony every Saturday night. And that's typical for a Colombian shaman to go around the country or live in the cities outside of here and hold a ceremony every weekend. So I used to do that every week or 2 weeks. And because I had a hostel, I used to bring people down there, bring people to ceremony. When I come down here to Putumayo, which is the rainforest, I haven't been able to stay for long periods of time because I've only been coming here for the last 6 years while living in the US. I usually will come for a week or 2 weeks, and I'll do it 3 or 4 times a week. And I think in the future, you need like 10,000 hours to master something. So I think I might have about 9,000 hours to go.
You're going to be an outlier on ayahuasca.
I've done 10,000 hours. Okay. Talk. Okay. Is that your friend in the background, the dog?
Sorry, that's not my friend. I'm in the Maloka. This is the place that we're building right now. These are local. These are our dogs, but they won't stop.
We don't mind.
Sorry about
by
that.
the way, after the pandemic now, with everybody in Zoom and at home, it's either kids or dogs. I think we even had one where we had a monkey. So, it is what would you like to see happen in Colombia if and when the United States ever gets around to at least decriminalizing cannabis? Want to import it?
Yeah, I mean, to the U.S., definitely. From Colombia, absolutely. I think, like I said before, when you start talking about plant medicine, the indigenous people here have been working with plants for a very long time as medicine. Yeah. And they have an understanding of these plants as medicine to treat disease like mine, for example. So it's not just the medicine, it's not just the cannabinoids, in my opinion. I mean, I'm practicing shamanism, so whenever take what I say from that point of view, everything is energy. And I believe that there's like 2,000 or 5,000 shaman who really understand plant medicine in South America, maybe, or in these regions. So I think that we should use the knowledge that they have and work with them to develop medicine that can be used around the world. Absolutely.
What's your regiment about using ayahuasca? If somebody else has MS or any kind of autoimmune disease, what's your advice or recommendation if you're still there?
Well, we knew this might happen. He'll get back on us. Yeah. There we go.
Sorry about that.
That's right. You can ask the question again, Josh.
So I was just asking about your advice on anybody who wants to use this for their own medicinal well-being, if they have multiple sclerosis or any other autoimmune disease. What's your advice on how to start a regimen for ayahuasca?
I'm so sorry.
That's okay. Do you hear us still? Jonathan, do you hear us?
You there?
Jonathan, do you hear us?
Yes. Can you say it again?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was curious about your regimen.
Say that again?
Yeah, what's your regimen for ayahuasca? What's your advice if somebody wants to start using it?
My advice is to take it with somebody who knows what they're doing. Right. Don't do it alone. And it's like I said, it's not just medicine. There's information and there's energy behind it. So everything that you do, I mean, just because somebody also like serves medicine doesn't mean that you should take it. So you really need to take this kind of medicine. It's super sacred, from a trusted source, someone who is humble, and also powerful and has that power to teach you, because that's really what you're getting from somebody who's sharing medicine. They're educating you. So you have to make sure you're learning from the right people.
Right. So I'm in Massachusetts, Doug's in New Jersey, and Josh is in Washington State. And I know in Massachusetts, there are guided ayahuasca experiences available out there. How do you know when someone knows what they're doing with it or not?
Ask somebody, get a trusted reference.
Gotcha.
Or go with somebody. Ask me or someone like me, who's somebody who has. There's a lot of people who are sharing medicine these days. A lot of people who have studied in Brazil and Peru and Colombia, and all those people are connected to teachers behind them. So I used to take medicine in the city, and it was a great shaman. It was a great experience, but I needed to go deeper. I needed to go further to get to the roots of it. So for me personally, I want to go where the medicine is from. The medicine, this yahe comes from Putumayo, right where I am, right here behind me. Yeah. So this is where I want to be to take it. And my partner, in my opinion, is the best there is. So he's the one I want to learn from. But there's other really good shaman out there. So just make sure that you get a referral from somebody who you know, or there's other like ayahuasca.org and some other good websites that share information of good retreat centers around the world.
And is there like certifications or licenses or just experiences or anything like that? Or is it just experiential learning, as it were? Oh.
So sorry about this, guys.
No, don't be sorry. This is so cool. Are you kidding me? I think it's great.
The guy who has my internet, he's holding my internet. He took off. So the phone is connected, and that's why I'm like looking for him here. I'm like, I don't know where he went. Took off with the internet, but can you ask the question again, please?
Yeah, no. Are there levels of again? How do you know that someone's got experience with it other than a reference? In other words, does anybody offer guided tours or certification courses or anything like that?
Well, there are certification courses for different things like psychedelic medicine, but honestly, I don't trust a lot of them. Okay. There's courses being set up for like how to be a psychedelic facilitator. And I saw some of the teachings and I'm like, there is no way I would ever do that. I mean, what are these people thinking? Who is teaching them? And if you go back and you look to where the roots came from and where they learned from, it makes sense. It's wrong. It's, in my opinion, it's just not what I would want for healing, because this is a healing and a spiritual journey. So you should use your intuition more than anything. I mean, in your gut will tell you if somebody is right and feels good to you and you feel comfortable with them and you feel like you can learn. I mean, to be a taita in Colombia, you get a crown, and you can't wear you can't really wear the crown or get the crown if you're not good. So almost always you're in good hands if you're with a taita. But again, still, I would get a recommendation or go with somebody.
Yeah.
What does the experience
just come
like?
down here? Just come here.
I was going to say,
right
we
here.
can make a field trip, guys. Are you ready to do that?
Just come to Lacuna. This is it. Let's go.
I was going to ask about the experience for tourism down there. If someone's going to go down there, what's that look like? Do I need a card? Can I just walk into a shop?
Yeah, he's frozen. I don't know if I can still.
I'm
so sorry, guys.
No, that's all right. Did you hear the question? That's all right. Hey, Jonathan, if you can hear us, thank you for making the effort. There you are. Now you're back. Do you hear us? Sort of. I'd love to meet the guy that's running around.
You hear me?
I know. Connection. You know what I mean?
Me too.
I just see him with one of those things that they have on the golf course.
Yeah, he's like a sound guy.
Picture, like an umbrella with like a big metal pole sticking up.
Yeah, there he goes. Hey, Jonathan, rather than battle this is great, by the way. I so enjoyed talking with you. First of all, how do people, can you give out
his
how
phone.
people...
He's...
I know it. Is he still there or not? Can you give out, how do we get to you? I know how to get to you, but do you want to be get to? Do you want people to find you in Columbia? Yes. He says, yes. Okay. We'll figure it out and we'll share, but are you there?
Oh, I'm here.
Okay.
I'm happy to talk anytime. Normally I can like sit and organize and have internet, but we just walked up the mountain today. We just brought in like 5 loads of stuff on our backs, like 2 kilometers. I didn't know what day we were going to arrive. And today was the day, and I don't like to cancel. So normally next time I'll be more organized. So
no, this is great. I want to make sure that we follow up because I'd love to talk with you more about the whole experience. And then we could talk about perhaps, I would love to figure out a way, guys, and it ain't going to happen in the next year, but to take a pilgrimage, if you will, to Colombia. And I can do it, and I can go in search of El Pibe. And do you know who El Pibe is by any chance, Jonathan?
Of course, Colombian soccer player.
Right, Carlos Valderrama. And it was always one of my favorites growing when I was watching. I played, I coached, whatever. But it would be a lot of fun for me to just hang out there and see that country, because I have heard some amazing things about Colombia in so many ways. And Lord knows, there's got to be a lot of Colombian in me after an odd number of years. You know what I'm saying? Jonathan Schwartz from Lacuna. Thank you for the effort you made and everything, and thank your assistant too, because one of these days I'd love to see what he walks around with. Oh, look at that! That's so cool. But your backdrop.
That's my Maloka. Yeah, this is so our cool. Temple. This is called the Maloka. So this we just built, and this is actually going to be inaugurated in 2 weeks, January 22nd to 30th. Our first retreat here in Lacuna. So
if I'm doing a show on Wednesday night, January 25th, we could try and do this again.
Thank you, guys.
All right, Jonathan. Hey, thank you for that, and appreciate you taking the time and doing that. All right, we have just enough time to go through the top 5 stories in cannabis. This was our poll that we put out there for our audience. We got quite a few responses, which I was very, very happy. And there was actually a few responses of people I didn't know, which was even better, you know? What do you think? Josh, if you had to pick the number 1 story in cannabis this year, what story would it have been?
I'm going to have to stick to my guns on seeing how many North American businesses owed taxes, whether it was Canadian or U.S. There's 500 million, I think, U.S. and 72% of Canadian companies owe taxes. I mean, don't hold me to those numbers, but it's substantial and it's alarming, and I think it's going to be an indicator of what's to come.
Okay. How about Doug? Doug, what do you think was the number 1 story in our group here? And I'm going to run them down after you guess which one.
I think it was some of the states that became legal and pushed the cannabis laws.
Well, New Jersey opening for adult use came in 4th, tied with the safe banking bill that got removed from, take your pick, anything in the Senate. And the number 3 story was the changes in the California laws, which have really helped California. At least this is what I'm hearing from the people in the business. Interesting. I forgot. Number 5 was the Brittany Griner arrest in Russia and that whole saga, if you will. The number 2 most important story, if you will, the U.S. Congress passing the Cannabis Research Bill and Opportunity unanimously. That was a big story. But the number 1 story, I feel like I'm David Letterman. The number 1 story in cannabis, according to our poll, and I'm going to pick 3 people that took the time to put in their thoughts about what they think were the top 5, was the presidential proclamation that cannabis is scheduled wrong and the laws should be reformed. Now, we all know what's going on in Washington, D.C. right now. If you don't know how dysfunctional this government is right now, just read the newspapers or check out the news, because it's amazing that even one of the political parties just can't get a leader. And the leadership is missing from both parties, as far as I'm concerned. And I happen to think both parties, 2-party system, is screwed up in this country right now. There's too much money. There's too much lobbying. There's too much lobbyists that are, putting money in the pockets of the people they need to keep in office. So that's my political statement for today. Josh, would you like to make a statement before we say goodbye?
No, I'll just say that 20,000%, like I said last time, 20,000% ROI from any lobbyist ensures it doesn't really matter either way. So we just got to keep on pushing our locals to ensure that our elected officials in the House and Senate do their thing, try to hold them accountable. It's about all we can do. Just got to come back to the show next week and find out what happens.
That's right. And Doug, you got any last thoughts? What's a good stock right now?
I'll just say, everyone, it's a happy new year, and let's make 2023 a successful one for the cannabis industry.
That's right. And play those tips close to the vest, man. Let people come to you and ask you, and maybe even compensate you for your consulting prowess as a trader. All right. Hey, so for Doug Miller and for Josh Kincaid, I'm Jimmy Young from Pro Cannabis Media. Stay tuned. Weed Talk News is next. And remember, it's a whole new world of weed out there. Use it responsibly.
Coming up on Weed Talk News this week, the cannabis sky is falling, and so is Massachusetts-based delivery service Lantern. Is the green rush over? No, it's just beginning in New York City as the Big Apple opens its doors to legal cannabis sales and lines up consumers for blocks. The U.S. Virgin Islands Senate passes an adult use legalization law, and their governor is ready to sign it. And Switzerland starts open adult use sales, the first in the European Union to do so. Aurora Cannabis brags about its net positive balance sheet. Does that impact its stock price? A new cannabis stock report on Weed Talk News with Elena Pinto. Next.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to this week's Weed Talk News, the first of 2023. I'm Elena Pinto, and the new year starts with new frontiers and a handful of new legal markets. While Congress has seemingly failed to deliver on its hopes to deliver federal cannabis reform during the lame duck session, that hasn't stopped states from continuing forward to greener pastures themselves. You can now legally purchase cannabis in Connecticut and New York State, as recreational sales are now in full swing. Although in New York, many in the industry say it'll be a tough road ahead with limited product supply and hundreds of applicants waiting for licenses from state regulators. But nonetheless, 2023 is already looking more green. And it's not just U.S. states. The governor of the U.S. Virgin Islands is expected to sign reforms into law that would legalize cannabis there. So just 2 months after the legislation was filed. The bills in question will legalize adult use cannabis and address expunging records. There's a lot happening on the Great Green Horizon, as well as overseas in Switzerland. And Lex Pelger has that story and more in this week's European Cannabis Report.
I'm Lex Pelger from White Whale Creations with this week's European Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. This month in Basel, Switzerland, they began the very first THC adult use cannabis trial in all of Europe. Named Weed Care, this landmark study is set to open the door to more adult use cannabis trials across the EU. The program has been delayed for 4 months because the supplier, Pure Production, narrowly failed to meet quality standards because of a low level of pesticide contamination. The second round of products passed the safety inspections, and now 2 types of hashish and 4 types of cannabis flower will be available from local pharmacies. And so, the green floodgates open. Here in France, the government has permanently lifted the ban on selling hemp flowers. 1 year ago, they authorized the sale of hemp CBD products containing less than 0.3% THC, such as oil or herbal teas. But they forbid the sale of hemp flowers and leaves despite their huge popularity. Within a month, a public outcry led to a temporary reversal of this order, and now the ban has been definitively dismissed. As the government stated, it has not been established that consumption of flowers and leaves of these varieties of cannabis with a low level of THC would involve risks for public health. For the 2,000 CBD shops in France, this is excellent news. At the EU level, a policy paper was released titled Council Conclusions on Human Rights-Based Approaches in Drug Policy. Driven by the Czech Republic, who currently holds the presidency of the EU, the paper's focus on human rights has it being cheered by drug policy researchers. It encourages the EU member states to promote drug policies that adhere to human rights, address discrimination, and reduce the stigma on people who use drugs. The paper acknowledges the rights of countries to decriminalize personal possession and has a focus on diversity, equality, and inclusivity. This signals a large shift in how the EU member states will be working with drugs and drug users in the future. That's a European Cannabis Report for this week. For more on the science side, see my newsletter on Substack, Cannabinoids and the People. I'm Lex Pelger from What Whale Creations reporting for Weed Talk News.
Back in the U.S., a Republican lawmaker in the Virginia House of Delegates has put forth legislation to regulate and start operating the state's adult use market, more than 18 months after the legislator legalized recreational weed. And advocates say there are still several kinks to work out, but further north, in New Jersey, the Garden State's market is blooming and booming. Jill Goldsberry has the details.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jill Goldsberry, and Happy New Year from Weed Talk News, New Jersey. Well, New Jersey is starting the year off on top, according to a recent report from High Times, New Jersey, from High Times. And it looks like New Jersey adult use in recreational retail sales hit over $100 million during the last quarter of 2022. Currently, there are 20 adult dispensaries selling recreational products in the state of New Jersey. And according to the CRC, the Cannabis Regulatory Commission, retail recreational sales increased by 46% during this time frame. And the CEO of Verano Multi-State Operators, George Archos, has actually said that he's very excited about the sales because they are meeting expectations in New Jersey. So that is all wonderful for the multi-state operators. On the wake of the December 29th legalization of recreational sales in New York State, Governor Murphy has put out a statement about this, and this comes from his press secretary, Natalie Hamilton. And I'll read you the statement. New Jersey's industry is serving as a model for other states in the nation and looks forward to continuing our efforts to grow a cannabis industry that reflects the diversity of the state, protects access for medical marijuana patients, and prioritizes justice and promotes equal opportunities for communities of color. That being said, there is a new program in New Jersey that will definitely benefit the minority and small business entrepreneur in the cannabis industry. The program is called the Cannabis Training Academy. It's designed to provide technical assistance to entrepreneurs establishing a cannabis business in New Jersey. It will be run by the New Jersey Action Center, and it will assist entrepreneurs in every aspect of doing business. And the program is slated to be funded by the Cannabis Regulatory Enforcement Assistance and Marketplace Modernization Fund. This is still not confirmed, but that's what we're hearing so far. We're working on confirming that with the Cannabis Regulatory Commission. And from what we're hearing, they are looking at proposing a 10-week accelerator program that will actually assist conditional license applicants through the program and get them ready. So this is launching sometime in 2023. I'm Jill Goldsberry with Weed Talk News New Jersey. Check the Cannabis Regulatory Commission website for more information. Thanks.
It's not all great news. However, as more markets on the East Coast begin to mature, many companies are feeling the blow, forcing some to even bow out of the industry. We Talk News producer Tori Chamberlain has the details in this week's Bay State Report.
Hi guys, I'm Tori Chamberlain, and here's what's happening in Massachusetts this week. It's the end of an era for home delivery in cannabis here in the Bay State. Meredith Mahoney, the CEO and co-founder at Lantern, took to social media this week to announce the end of the company. Now, Lantern was the first company to bring home delivery service here to people in Massachusetts, bringing your favorite products straight from the dispensary to your front door. Lantern was doing so well in the Bay State, they were even expanding their business to other parts of Massachusetts as recently as the summer of 2022. But unfortunately, it seems that with the maturing of other markets around Massachusetts, Lantern just can't keep up. And after 3 years of running its business, they are going to cease operations and will no longer be up and running by the end of this month, which is a pretty quick dissolve of a company. So again, while they say that their business in Massachusetts had been really good, Meredith Mahoney specifically cited something in her post online this week, where she said that due to both the speed of legalization and the challenging regulatory framework that affects all cannabis businesses, both ancillary and plant touching, they wish that every state could approach third-party tech companies the way that Massachusetts did. But unfortunately, Meredith says that's not how regulations are being proposed in key Northeast markets like New York State, which just came online with its market. Unfortunately, this is just another growing pain of the industry when you're doing so well in your own state, but when everyone else starts to get their own market going and you're not able to expand outside of your state lines, that's when things can really start to turn downward. So we're so sorry to hear that for Lantern, and this is another reminder for cannabis consumers to get out there and support your favorite businesses and give them your dollar. That's it for this week's Bay State Report. I'm Tori Chamberlain.
While the industry hasn't been kind to all companies, others are seemingly raking in the dough, perhaps even to the point where you could call it bragging rights. Deborah Borchardt explains in this week's Green Market Report.
I'm Deborah Borchardt, and this is the business update for Weed Talk News. This week, Aurora Cannabis bragged about its solid balance sheet holding $320 million. But the company neglected to mention that it had almost $600 million in cash just a year ago. Now, the company did reduce its convertible debt, but only by $84 million. And they also noted that they sold their Polaris facility, which did bring in $15 million. However, they neglected to say that that facility has only been open for 2 years, and it is thought that they spent $50 million developing it. Glass House Brands closed on a non-brokered private placement of Series C preferred stock. That raised $4.7 million of new capital on top of the $26.5 million that they raised in a preferred stock offering that closed in early December. Flower One Holdings began its previously announced reorganization plan, and the closing of the transactions contemplated by the plan, which included a Canadian restructuring transaction. And finally, next week, Connecticut will begin selling adult use cannabis in a few select stores across the state. Acreage Holdings, The Botanist, and Verano's Willowbrook each have locations approved for sales. And this has been the business update from the Green Market Report.
Now it's time for a new feature on Weed Talk News. It's the Cannabis Stock Report with Doug Miller.
Hello, I'm Doug Miller from High on Wall Street with this week's Cannabis Stock Report for Weed Talk News. Aurora Cannabis, stock ticker ACB, announced they closed the sale of its Aurora Polaris facility for a gross proceeds of approximately $15 million. Their balance sheet remains in a net cash position with approximately $320 million of cash and a cash equivalents, including approximately $63 million of restricted cash, which means they have something going on, and their stock chart resembles the same thing. It's looking real good. ETF Weed, stock ticker WEED, is looking to get smoking and go for a run. Hexo, stock ticker HEXO, after a recent reverse split, it's bouncing back and it's ready to get going again. And Curaleaf, stock ticker CURLF, caught my eye, and it looks like it's ready to get moving in the right direction. And that's this week's Cannabis Stock Report. Reporting for Weed Talk News, I'm Doug Miller.
In the Show Me state of Missouri, adult use cannabis sales are expected to launch soon. But it seems some advocates aren't satisfied with the fact that companies who already hold medical permits will have sales in the state to themselves for at least the next year. Brandon Jones has the latest happening in Missouri this week.
All right, everybody, it's Brandon Jones with Distribution Maven with Missouri Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. And that's right, Missouri sales are about to start here in February. And I'm joined today by JC, the owner of Dr. Smoke here downtown on Broadway here in downtown Kansas City. One of the applicants is trying to be able to get into adult use sales. They seem that they're going to put an entire year wait for you guys. Is that right, JC?
Correct, yeah. And it's a lottery at that point. So December, they've only issued the micro business license calendar. So they haven't even released the facilities or manufacturing or cultivation licensing infrastructure as far as dates wise. So we know that for people that want a micro business license, which I highly suggest, you guys out there that want to learn how to grow or are interested in getting in the industry and don't have a retail front, don't have a footprint in the industry yet, get on that micro business license. They haven't laid out the entire platform for it, but there's really, really great incentivizing for learning how to grow, getting in the industry, coming to retailers, dispensaries, selling your product. I don't know what the cap is. I've heard it's about $32,000 you can claim as far as gross profit, which seems low, but it's a great way to get your foot in the industry, take those steps up as a grower or manufacturer, and kind of get your foot in the door and start growing from there.
Because now in February, only the people that have the existing medical license are the ones that, and there's 212, and they have an entire year before.
Correct, yeah. So they've got a full year to kind of run the gamut, which is good and bad. It's good for the people to have cannabis, right? We've been fighting for this since I was a kid. I mean, when I started growing cannabis in the early 2000s, I was looked at as a drug dealer, a drug pusher, cultivator of street drugs. And now they're like, oh, congratulations, this is amazing. And it's the same,
right? It's the same
thing.
plant, exactly.
Paying taxes at this point. But yeah, come February 6th, you'll be able to walk into one of the 212 dispensaries in Missouri and purchase cannabis, which is beautiful. And hopefully they don't charge you too much.
Yeah, JC, I guess the next thing, is just because you can actually start in a year, does that mean you're ready to start selling in a year? Or is that we can just start applying?
So for those that want to get a micro business license, you can apply in June of this year. They will evaluate them in September, October, and then make a decision if you qualify for that lottery in December. So even if you did get approved in this first run for micro business license, you wouldn't even be issued until December, and you probably wouldn't even begin to start selling until a few months after that. So it's going to be a process, but stay vigilant. We've been fighting for this for years.
Yeah.
And we got to make sure that people of color and people that have been disenfranchised by the war on cannabis get a chance and a say in this. And it's so valuable for those communities to have a say in this and be able to participate, because growing up, all of my peers have spent time in jail, spent time in prison, and we've had people of color that are still serving time in prison, and we need to cut that shit out. It's just unbelievable that it still exists today. Today I did read that 2 million cannabis possession charges were dropped. So that's a start. We still have millions more to go, and keep fighting the good fight, guys. This has been a long time coming. It's a beautiful day that we can even possess cannabis without going to jail. We can use it as the medicine that it's been for the last 50 years.
Yeah, this is the next access, because right now there's only currently 2 minority licenses in all of the state of Missouri.
Yeah,
so this is another way so we can finally get those people that were affected the most more licenses, and we'll get into the actual industry themselves and get those some licenses. And this is just, you're talking about the beginning. What about cultivation and any of that. That's nowhere down the road.
They still haven't even outlined the timeline for that. So for people that have, the financial backing to get into this, unfortunately, like any other big business, this is a very corrupt one from the get-go. We saw, Missouri had an 8 license cap. We get some dispensaries were able to get up to 16, which is pretty interesting. But we knew that was coming. We knew this was not going to be a fair start, and that, a bunch of California money, Colorado money, a bunch of lawyers from out of state were able to really infiltrate the system. But, this is one of those things that we've been fighting for this for so long, and we'll keep fighting. And, to all those that want to participate can participate. Let's keep up the good fight, guys.
Yeah, one more year. It's not too long to wait, right? But at least we got adult use for this year. We can get everything in line, and everybody, like you said, has more access. I know there's a lot of people that are changing things, just the whole mindset, the stigma is starting to change here in the city, feeling it a lot. So new projects, entertainment districts opening here, lots of things are getting ready to happen.
Tons of opportunity. So start your brands, start getting a buzz on the internet, start designing what you want to come up with, bring something unique to the market, and you will succeed.
All right, guys. Well, again, I'm Brandon Jones from Distribution Maven with the Missouri Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. Stay medicated and educated. And thanks again, JC, for joining me today.
Appreciate you. Thanks so much.
Lawmakers in Michigan recently passed a handful of pro-cannabis bills, but now the state's governor is vetoing them. Michigan NORML Executive Director Rick Thompson explains why.
Hello again, everyone. This is the Michigan Report with Rick Thompson on Weed Talk News. Let's begin. The Michigan legislature passed 3 bills pertaining to cannabis in the lame duck session, which ended early in December. They included, well, it doesn't really matter what they included because Governor Whitmer vetoed all 3. Her reasoning is sound and it makes sense, and that she says if the bills were passed before the election as a result of proper debate and public input, she could have supported them. But lame duck bills are rushed through the voting process, and that eliminates much of the public aspect of lawmaking. All 3 bills will have a chance at being passed again in the 2023-2024 session of the legislature. Now, lame duck sucks. It is the lawmakers' time to act irresponsibly, and anyone wishing to pass cannabis law reform bills should push them through during the legislature's pre-election period of 23 months. Well, it's finally here. This week, medical marijuana facilities in Detroit got the go-ahead from state and city officials to begin selling adult-use cannabis. Now, the first stores approved were House of Dank, a 10-store chain, and Da Cut, a small-time retail operation. 33 licenses in total were issued to cannabis retailers after legal challenges to the city's controversial ordinance were addressed in court. 90 applications were received, meaning about 2/3 of the applicants will have to try to get a license in the second application period, which might begin as soon as the end of this month. The city will add up to 30 more retail licenses, 20 micro-business licenses, and 20 social consumption lounge licenses. Well, you just can't do that. Police arrested the owner of Top Shelf Hookah and Smoke Shop in Port Huron this week on charges he was selling more than tobacco products to his patrons, including children. Mohammed Alsan was arraigned in December on several charges, including operating a drug house, maintaining a drug operation, and possession of a controlled substance with intent to distribute. When the police raided his home, he had more than $250,000 of cannabis stashed there, plus some cash and a gun. This week, a judge ordered the man to stand trial. Now, no one should go to jail for possessing or using a plant. But in this case, Mr. Alsan's alleged behavior is criminal, and it carries a consequence. His trial will take place later in 2023. A final story. I am proud to have 2 of my podcasts rated among the 60 best cannabis podcasts listed from A to Z. Now, the list is published annually by Celeb Stoner, was written by Steve Bloom. Jazz Cabbage Cafe was listed for the 3rd year running. You can catch episodes of that broadcast on the Pro Cannabis Media Roku channel every Tuesday. Jazz Cabbage just launched our 7th season with this week's broadcast. Other Michigan podcasts mentioned, including the Smoking Rope podcast hosted by my friend Ryan Basor, and the Benzinga Cannabis Insider, recorded in Detroit. Now, the other show I'm on semi-regularly, which made the list, is In the Weeds with Jimmy Young. That's right. Now, you can find that full list of top-rated shows on the Celeb Stoner website. And that's it for the Michigan Report with Rick Thompson on Weed Talk News.
Canada has had legal cannabis for several years now, and the country even has a federal program that allows patients to grow an amount of medical cannabis for themselves or someone else. So why are so many of them now being revoked? Well, Debbie Facey has those details and more.
Hi, this is Debbie Facey from Weed Talk News, your Canadian correspondent with this week's, or I should say this year's, first toke of the week. So what we have in Canada going on right now is the Canadian board would like to revoke, or has started to revoke, some of the medical registrations when it comes to growing medical marijuana on their own property. What that means when it comes to medical patients, we have a ability to be able to grow what our prescriptions have been entitled to, such as if we are designated to 37 grams per month, that can equal out to, or up to per se, 15 plants at a time. That is something that is not allowed for any other consumer, I should say, recreational consumer, due to the fact that they have the limitation of growing only 4 plants at a time, which meaning 2 during one season and 2 during the next. That is something that we have in the works that is going on, and hopefully we get it sorted due to the fact that medical patients are and should be allowed to have access to the cannabis that they are allotted for. What we also have happening in Canada is Aurora actually closing most, and if not all, of their facilities. Due to their massive loss in 2022, Aurora has decided to close many of their facilities, which means many job losses, many brands underneath their band having to either find a new band or having lost the opportunity of being in the legal industry, and also has made Aurora once again a, sad to say, an unprofitable license producer. What we have exciting news going on in January here in Vancouver, Canada, is the Lift Expo. Lift Expos had happened in 2016 and came to Toronto and has now traveled from both here as in Toronto and also Vancouver. It is going to be making its first appearance in the States coming up in May. But Lift is a conference where consumers, brand LPs, budtenders, as well as the everyday cannabis connoisseur can enjoy, especially when it comes to now being a 3-day experience from a 2-day experience. If you're looking for more info, you could always check www.lift.com to find out more about that event. Once again, this is Debbie Facey, wishing, or I should say, hopefully that you all had a great New Year and Christmas, holiday. And yeah, this is Debbie Facey, the Canadian correspondent, with this week's toke of the week.
All seems to be quiet in the U.S. Capitol, with the 118th Congress now convening. The immediate path to federal reform seems uncertain. But that hasn't stopped some in the federal government from trying to see the greener side of things. Vote Pro podcast Phil Adams has this week's Washington, D.C. report.
Hi, I'm Phil Adams from Vote Pro podcast, and this is the Weed Talk News D.C. report. A federal health agency is promoting a new online resource detailing cannabis research. The National Center for Complementary and Integrative Health recently launched an online directory of ongoing federally funded cannabis research projects, as well as study grant opportunities. Among the broad portfolio of research supported by the NCCIH are studies investigating the cannabis sativa plant, cannabis extracts and derivatives, cannabinoid and other constituent compounds, and the endocannabinoid system. The NCCIH, an agency of the National Institutes of Health, said, quote, "There is considerable interest in the possible therapeutic uses of cannabis and its constituent compounds." The U.S. Customs and Border Protection seized less illegal marijuana in 2022 than ever before. According to the most recent federal data, the nearly 155,000 pounds seized last year represents a new record low, which cannabis reform advocates attribute to the increase in state-level legalization. The CPB's annual haul has declined by almost 95% since fiscal year 2012, when it seized more than 2.8 million pounds of cannabis, and is about half of what it was in 2021. Among the contributing factors, experts point in part to a shift in law enforcement priorities, but more broadly view the trend as a reflection of the growing legal domestic cannabis markets squeezing out demand for smuggled cannabis. The Drug Enforcement Administration also acknowledged in the 2023 budget summary it submitted to Congress that legal domestic cannabis is undermining marijuana trafficking across the border. That's the Weed Talk News DC report for this week. I'm Phil Adams from Vote Pro Podcast.
People in Vermont have been enjoying the fruits of legal cannabis for a few months now, and the industry seems to be budding. But a change at the state's Cannabis Regulatory Board could mean that some people have to wait a little longer to license their company. Here's Jessie Lynn Dolan with the Vermont Report.
I'm Jessie Lynn Dolan from Nurse Grown Organics and Vermont Cannabis Nurses, and this is the Weed Talk News Vermont Report. With the start of the new year, the Cannabis Control Board has changed its meeting schedule from weekly to monthly, with the next meeting not scheduled to convene until Monday, January 30th. For those waiting on licenses, this means they may have to wait a month before the board can vote and decide on approval. With this change, the Cannabis Control Board will be hosting more networking events for current and prospective licensees to allow the opportunity to share knowledge, ask questions, and connect on a multitude of topics. The first meeting was held on January 5th, entitled New Businesses, Navigating the First Few Years, with the next one to be held on January 24th. On Friday, January 6th, Pine Grove Organics, licensed retailer and branded, hosted a Meet the Producer Day with representatives from Fog Valley Farm manufacturers, offering free cookies and hot chocolate, insight into their edible making, and 30% off all Valley Farm store products. Vermont currently has 37 licensed retailers throughout the state, and we look forward to seeing many more in the coming months. That's the Vermont Report for Weed Talk News. I'm Vermont's cannabis nurse, Jessie Lynn Dolan.
The Vermont Cannabis Report is supported by another Green Mountain business, Canatrol, winner of High Times Best Dry Cure System. Check them out at canatrols.com.
There's a change in licensing in Illinois, too. The next year could mean a holdout on licensing, depending on who you are. Thomas Howard has those details.
Hey, everybody. It's me, Tom, cannabis industry lawyer. You can find me on Cannabis Legalization News on YouTube. And I was shocked with the news out of Illinois while we were off on Christmas holiday break into the new year as well. What happened was on December 21st, the IDPFR, which is the Illinois Department of Financial and Professional Regulation, the IDFPR, they issued a press release, and they also issued definitionals and other eligibility criteria and a proposed form of a new application for the next round of 55 dispensary licenses coming to the state of Illinois, and it is very peculiar. And by very peculiar, I mean the state references a particular rule, then it also attaches to their new procedures that they're going to do with this application, the citation to that rule. If you are following along at home, it's 68 IAC 1291.410(e). And then you go down to 6, and that's where it talks about how to be eligible as a social equity applicant or not in the regulations. But then when you read what the state wants you to do and how you can be actually eligible, they have like a little pictogram that's there. You can go to the IDPFR's website and check it out. It came out on December 21st, by the way. And they say now you have to be all three things, in the sense that before in social equity in Illinois, you had to have either have resided in a disproportionately impacted area for 5 out of the past 10 years, more or less, or you had to have been arrested or be a member of a family who was arrested or convicted of a cannabis crime that was eligible for expungement under the Illinois Cannabis Regulation and Tax Act from 2019. That has now changed. And there used to be that or. IDPFR is reading that or right out of the statute that says now you must currently reside there, A. B, they've gotten rid of the Illinois resident in the disproportionately impacted area because they needed to use census data to redefine that to get around a Dormant Commerce Clause challenge. So they have, which means that now anybody can apply. It's a little different though, because if you actually read the regulation that they cited, that 410E, they still use the term Illinois resident and disproportionately impacted area, but then they've changed the definition of disproportionately impacted area to use census data, which means they could be anywhere, but they still say Illinois resident. So they have some litigation risk there. But it doesn't seem like the IDP, I sometimes call them the IDPF as opposed to the IDFPR. They don't really care, it appears. Despite the regulations saying that, they've created a procedure that completely disregards what the regulation says. And not to mention that they haven't defined the statutory definition of these things and amended that. So I'm not sure if the regulator has the authority to conduct the dispensary lottery, how they purport to do it, meaning that you must currently reside and have one of, and they have many different ones in the lottery. They have like one of the things is being food stamps. You could be eligible for food stamps. Here's the 5 criteria ones that they're calling it now. Poverty level census tract, SNAP level census tract. SNAP is food stamps, and poverty and SNAP, 20% is the threshold. Food desert census tract. Medicaid supplemental security income, Social Security disability income, and or subsidized housing is one of them. And then the final one is high school graduation tract of census lands. If many people don't graduate from high school where you currently live and have lived for 5 out of the past 10 years, and you can prove that, that also makes you eligible under criteria 1. Criteria 1. Now we're going to go to the other criterion. Number 2, that is you also now need to have been either arrested for cannabis or a member of a family who was arrested for cannabis. And this is where you get an or. A new or, you could be a victim of a gun crime. And all 3 of these aspects are required. When you read the press release that they have there, and I've created a new blog post on this over at my law blog, CannabisIndustryLawyer.com, and I've excerpted from it and linked over there to what they have. They make sure that they restate this. You know, a top participant or a lottery winner is what they mean. They must have proved each one of those 3 bullet points. Again, you must currently reside there. You must have been there for 5 out of the past 10 years. And you have to qualify under criteria B, meaning that you're a victim of a gun crime, a family member of yours was arrested for cannabis, or you were arrested for cannabis. I don't know how this is going to play out, because those are eligibility gates. You can't play the lottery unless you are those 3 things. But then when you read the regulation about what they say, it says something totally different. This is what the regulation actually says. And the funny thing is they attach a copy of the PDF of this regulation that they say is now enforced. And so when you read the 2, your mind starts to split in half. You're like, what is going on? How can this and that also be true? Because what they're doing directly contradicts that regulation. And that regulation does redefine social equity. Does the legislature actually need to do that? Anyway, let's go over what the regulation says. Now, the regulation says you need to prove one of 2 options. Option 1 is that you are a 51% owned and controlled by a person who resided for 5 out of the past 10 years in a DIA And again, DIA has now been defined as being anywhere because it's a census tract information. Or, and now you have conditional language again, or that is the arrest or the family member arrest. So those are the two option ones. And if you have one of those two things, you're eligible according to the regulations, but not the actual application released by the department. Or now you could be in option 2. And then for that, you need 4 of these need to be required. So if you're not going to be socially equity owned, 51% by the arrest or by the longtime residence in one of these DIAs, then you need to have 4 out of a possible 7 elements they give you. Number 1, 26% own social equity. Number 2, you will locate and operate your dispensary for 2 years in a DIA. Number 3, during the first 2 years, at least 25% of your cannabis will be coming from social equity license holders. Number 4, during the first 2 years, 30% of all services and vendors will be either minorities, women, or disabled business owners. Number 5, you will give a $250,000 community college grant and provide membership within the first 2 years of operations. Number 6, within 60 days of winning your license, you will provide $250,000 to a grant, another license, as a grant to another license who is actually awarded to a social equity applicant. So now we're creating grants within winners. And then number 7, within 60 days, pay $500,000 to the Cannabis Business Development Fund. See, at least that one shunts them in 2 different ways and says, okay, social equity applicants, we're really preferencing them. But if somebody else wants to play, you're going to pay through your teeth if you win. However, the regulations that then the department has provided, and you can, please do go to the website and read the press release that you have, and then read the regulation they cite, and show me where I'm wrong, because I kept reading it and I'm like, what the heck is going on here? But that's you now need to have all 3 criteria. So first, you have to be in one of those census tracts currently and had, you can prove it for 5 out of the past 10 years. Then also, you need to have been arrested for cannabis, or somebody in your family has, or someone like you has been a victim of a gun crime, and all 3 of those are required. It's not in the regulations that they cited. It's not in the statute. Welcome to Illinois, the most equitable and accessible cannabis industry in the nation. That's the report and the big news that came out of Illinois. Tune in as this continues to develop. Back to you, Elena.
Depending on where you live, you may find it relatively easy to get your medical cannabis recommendation. And that seems to be an issue for health officials in Pennsylvania. Claudia Post has that story and more in this week's Pennsylvania Report.
I'm Claudia Post from Scarlet Express, and I'm here in the Keystone State, Pennsylvania, reporting for Weed Talk News. Juul, the popular electronic cigarette manufacturer, has agreed to pay $38.8 million to Pennsylvania's Department of Health as part of a settlement and a lawsuit over its marketing practices. Boy, they got in a lot of trouble. The settlement also bars the company from marketing its products to Pennsylvania youth, from placing billboards or other ads within 1,000 feet of schools or public playgrounds, and from claiming in its ads that Juul products are safer than traditional tobacco cigarettes. Josh Shapiro, our governor-elect, said in a statement that the company knowingly targeted young people with tactics similar to the tobacco company's playbook. The progress we've made over the years to prevent youth from nicotine addiction was at risk of being totally undone by Juul starting a youth vaping epidemic. The settlement money will fund a number of anti-tobacco initiatives in Pennsylvania. Members of Pennsylvania's Medical Marijuana Advisory Board are publicly questioning the Wolf administration's oversight of doctors and third-party certification companies, concerns that echo a year-long investigation into the state's program. Each year, hundreds of thousands of patients must receive approval from a physician, and that physician is approved, that they want to legally use cannabis in the state. Some patients connect to their physicians through largely unregulated third-party companies. Spotlight, a news outlet, reported that some of these businesses make misleading or incorrect medical claims. which actually helps them benefit from unequal advertising rules and allegedly tie a doctor's payment to patient approvals. Denise Johnson, the state's physician general and acting health secretary, told board members the department would provide more details before the next meeting, but she emphasized the importance of patient complaints. So if you are in Pennsylvania, complain. Several Pennsylvania state senator Republicans are encouraging the lame duck, Pat Toomey, to support legislation designed for helping cannabis businesses gain access to financial and insurance services. While progress has been made on a state level, federal action is seen by the Republicans as key. A standalone bill, the SAFE Banking Act, had passed several times in the House but failed to gain traction in the Senate. A report from Stop the Drug War noted an unprecedented surge in armed robberies of cannabis stores that began in 2021. Again, so dangerous and really need to have top security. Expanding banking access for cannabis businesses can drive down those sorts of robberies. Most robberies were after the cash, not necessarily the marijuana. Federal action may happen during the next legislative session, and Toomey's retirement won't be a roadblock because the person that is replacing him is John Fetterman, and he has been an outspoken advocate for marijuana reform and legalization. Go John Fetterman. That's a wrap from Pennsylvania. I'm Claudia Post from Scarlet Express, and I'll be back next week to talk about what's hot and what's not in Pennsylvania. From Weed Talk News, have a fabulous week.
Another entity that seems to be under scrutiny is Canadian-based company Chalice Brands. Not for anything happening in their home country, but instead for some questionable business practices in Oregon. Marianne Kursagi has that story and more.
I'm Marianne from Alibi Cannabis with this week's Oregon Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. According to a story by Willamette Week, Canadian company Chalice Brands has been called out for their lack of payment to vendors. Farms are owed hundreds of thousands of dollars, while Chalice hasn't published financial statements yet and is reportedly without a CFO. Unrivaled is exiting the Oregon market by selling its interest in Letterman and Psychonaut so they can focus their efforts on the California market. And last, Marion County has one last illegal grow this week as the Oregon State Police shut down an operation with over 2,500 plants. That'll do it for the Oregon Report this week. I'm Marianne with Alibi for Weed Talk News.
And finally, everyone's favorite stoner uncle is making his own line of weed a reality. Snoop Dogg, he's my uncle too, recently acquired Death Row Records and reintroduced the company as a multi-category brand, including music, fashion, and now cannabis. The company just gave the heads up this week that its first official drop will be announced via Death Records social media. And everything Death Row has to offer is apparently going to be connected through blockchain technology. Cryptocurrency has already inched its way into the cannabis circle, so it was only a matter of time before the move of the blockchain got involved. After all, it is a whole new world of weed out there. Remember to use it wisely. And we will, of course, keep our eyes out for Snoop's first cannabis drop. For now, that's Weed Talk News. I'm Elena Pinto.
It's a whole new world of weed out there, isn't it? Everyone is learning new ways to titrate, ingest, consume, imbibe, and engage with this plant medicine we call cannabis. Hi, I'm Jimmy Young, the founder of Pro Cannabis Media and the host of In the Weeds, and once in a while, the really live business cannabis talk show we call Green Rush on Friday afternoons from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern. Now let me tell you my cannabis story. You know, I've had 4 major surgeries in the past 23 years and suffer from osteoarthritis with a variety of metal parts in my body and one on deck. Now, thanks to those chronic pain issues, I've been a medical patient in Massachusetts for almost 10 years now. I remember my first trip to a dispensary just outside of Boston, and I told the bud tender I didn't want to smoke it anymore, so I tried edibles, then tinctures, then vaping, and now, if I'm going to smoke, I only use the Weedjits filtration system. What? The Weedgets.com, Weedgets, that's weed, W-E-E-D, G-E-T-S.com, is where you'll find the planet's coolest product that cools the smoke from everyone's favorite flower. Now, the guy that started this was a pretty good medical device manufacturer, and he created this maze pipe that cools the smoking process from 1300 degrees Fahrenheit upon inflammation down to just 90 degrees when it reaches your mouth. That's right, 1300 down to 90. That's why this maze pipe is amazing. So here's how it works. You start with that glass bowl, you flame on, and then you inhale nice and smooth so the smoke goes through 3 different filtration and cooling systems. Now, if pre-rolls is your thing, you can use the Weedgets filter that a pre-roll fits into perfectly. That's right, or even a chillum. The more filters, the smoother the draw. Best of all is the price. You can get all this, or one or the other, for just a few bucks. It'll cool your smoke and you'll give your lungs a break. Now, add in the code of PCMTV and you get 15% off. So just go to Weedgets.com and check out the best way to enjoy a cooler smoke with less coughing and hacking and more peace of mind. All that resin and tar is collected in the polyurethane filters that are easy to clean with soap, water, and a few Q-tips. Your lungs will thank you, and so will I.
Which at first I thought, oh, I don't know if I'm an activist, but I have, held a bullhorn on the State House steps. I have frequently testified before the Cannabis Control Commission in the state legislature, and I'm not, shy about criticizing where I see, mistakes being made. So yeah, I think that's what differentiates me, just an appreciation for the plant. And then also I'm a cannabis entrepreneur myself. I've started businesses, so I've lived that entrepreneurial journey. I know how hard it is. It is absolutely a marathon, not a sprint. So I think that, I'm in the game, not just on the sidelines.
As a broker, we have access to many, many cannabis carriers. So I will go in with 2 or 3 quotes for people. The quotes might be $20,000 for one, $22,000 for another, $17,500 for another. Pretty close among the 3. What I tell people is it's not the pricing, it's what's included and not included, meaning exclusions. An exclusion in layman's terms is just something that's not included. It's not on the menu. So it's just not included. But if you don't know that, if no one shows you that on page 71 of a 150-page policy, you're not going to know. No one knows. I never met one person that says they read an insurance policy. If you do, I got some property in Florida for you.
Weed Talk and In the Weeds are 2 productions of Pro Cannabis Media supported by Revolutionary Clinics, one of the top medical cannabis dispensaries in the Massachusetts area, now with 3 locations in Greater Boston, 2 in Cambridge and 1 on Broadway in Somerville. Rev Clinics has a patient-first mission. They will customize your needs as a medical patient with the proper titration and combination of strains, flavors, and products. Rev Clinics, where the patient comes first.
So the reality of the matter is, big banks and small banks are going to be different in a lot of ways. And they're both going to have their advantages and disadvantages. For a business like cannabis, you really have to have an integral knowledge of that business and a real granular knowledge of that business and the players involved in it. And that's why if you look at the banks that are successful to play in this space in Massachusetts, they are smaller banks that are very heavy, intensified personal touch, human communication, where you don't get a lot of that with the bigger banks.
Bay State Cannabis Report is supported by Holyoke Cannabis, Holyoke's finest cannabis recreational experience.